Chapter 2381. For the sake of loving her, she pulled out the thorns on her body one by one until she was covered in bruises. She hoped that one day, she would be able to take back her pride, dignity, and face from Muyaja. But now, she was in despair. I'm a fool. A big fool. Song Enya was so agitated that she grabbed the bedsheets and scratched at them. Tears and snot flowed down her cheeks. Jiang Qimeng hugged her in her arms with heartache. Song Enya cried bitterly. Mom, I was wrong. I should have listened to you back then and not pestered him. But I have nothing now. My pride, my self-esteem, everything has been ruthlessly trampled on by him. I'm like a hedgehog whose thorns have been pulled out and I'm covered in wounds. In the end, I've become a joke to everyone. Mu Yanqing. Mu Yanqing must hate me. He hates me for being shameless and unscrupulous. He must think that I'm cheap. God knows how he'll look down on me if he finds out how the child in my tummy came about. Then get your pride and self-esteem back. I can't get it back. Song Enya broke down. Look at how smug they are now. What can I do? I should have expected this. I should have expected that a proud man like him would never allow himself to be down and out, not even for a minute. I naively thought that he would be left with nothing after leaving the Mu group. How laughable. He was so proud that he would never allow himself to fall to the bottom. Silly child, it's precisely because of this that you have to work harder to live a better life. Believe me, if you marry into the Mu group and live a glorious life, who will laugh at you? Even if he makes a comeback, so what? Although the Mu group has suffered a great loss, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. No matter what, Xingyu Financial Group can't compete with the Mu group. The Mu group had been at the top for a long time. It was deeply rooted in the company, and no one could shake their position. If you become the young mistress of the Mu family, others will be envious. Who will look down on you? With tears in her eyes, Song Enya nodded helplessly. I've already laid all my cards on the table with Mu Yanqing that day. He doesn't believe that what happened that day was a coincidence at all. People from the Mu family are indeed not easy to fool. So what if he knows? He has to acknowledge this child whether he wants to or not. As Jiang Qimeng said this, the corners of her lips curled up into a cold smile. The Mu family. Your child? Mu Shumin stared at Mu Yanqing, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. Mu Yanqing. That Song Enya is pregnant with your child? Yes. You. Are you trying to anger me? At this critical juncture, you actually came up with such a trick. Mu Shumin said angrily. She had expected better from him. Of Mu's Mu aunt ans's Mu 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 to Mu's child's Yun Mu's child of A's. If you didn't touch her, then how did she get pregnant? Mu Shumin did not think much of it. Since she's pregnant with your child, what's there to deny? Chapter 2382. Artificial insemination? Mu Shumin was shocked. Mu Yanqing nodded, looking a little aggrieved. He did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, you can ask second uncle about this matter. He has already sent people to investigate the background of the child in Song Enya's stomach. I think we should get an answer soon. Mu Shumin furrowed his brows, looking a little surprised. Why would she do that? Even if she used such a method, she shouldn't have targeted you, right? I heard that this lass has never changed her mind about Yaja. How did it involve you? Mu Yanqing was at a loss about Mu Shumin's doubts. He. I don't know. Who knows what she's thinking? I wasn't wary of her, but I didn't expect her to plot against me. Mu Shumin's interest was piqued as he asked, oh? Where did this come from? What the hell is going on? That day, I met her at a bar. Mu Yanqing gave a concise account of what had happened that night. Mu Shumin's expression changed again and again as he listened. In the end, shock was not enough to describe it. She actually used such a despicable method on you? Ha! That Jiang Qimeng is really too much. As a daughter, she's despicable, and as a mother, she's also fooling around. How does the Song family discipline their women? Does Song Jingguan know about this? I'm not sure. Mu Yanqing moved and said, anyway, Auntie, you have to believe me. I didn't touch her at all. Although I've had other women outside and played with them, I've always known my limits. I'll never have any thoughts about someone who doesn't change. Song Enya has the Song family behind her. If I were to mess around, wouldn't her mayor father skin me alive? Mu Shumin was silent for a moment before he muttered, if that's really what you said, in my opinion, this child can't be kept. What do you mean? If such a scheming woman marries into the Mu family, won't the world be turned upside down? The Mu family is already in a mess. With such a woman, it'll be chaos. No matter what, you have to marry a woman who's easy to control. I'm worried that you won't be able to subdue Song Enya. Mu Yanqing laughed disdainfully. There's no woman that I can't subdue. That's because you haven't fallen for men. Hee hee. Don't underestimate women. After a moment of silence, he suddenly thought of something and asked, Auntie, do you know about Xingyu Financial Group's recent listing in New York? Chapter 2383. At the thought of this, Mu Shumin was furious. B** starred, how can we let him have his way? What should we do now, then? Since this battle has already begun, even if we have to bite the bullet and suffer losses on both sides, we should still fight it. After saying that, Mu Shumin slowly stood up and said with a vicious expression, at the very least, we have to show him that the Mu family isn't so easy to bring down. Xingyu Financial Group alone is far from enough to bring down the Mu family. The two men looked at each other, their eyes filled with viciousness. The next day, Mu Shumin looked for Mu Linfeng and mentioned Song Enya's matter. Mu Linfeng sat at his desk and glanced at her. Suddenly, he said in a deep voice, I think I know what's going on now. Second brother, don't keep me in suspense. Since you said that you found out, why don't you tell me what's going on? That last didn't steal Mu Yanqing's sperm from the sperm vault but Mu Yaja's. She ran to America and secretly underwent artificial insemination. In the end, Yaja found out about it and secretly tampered with it, replacing it with Mu Yanqing's. She had painstakingly prepared for pregnancy and suffered a lot. When she finally got pregnant after much difficulty, she was awakened by Yaja's splashing of cold water on her. Not only that, he even used this as a threat to make Song Jingguo obediently hand over the land in Xiancheng. Then, he used this land for financing and successfully listed it. From the beginning to the end, everything was in his plan. He calculated step by step, including Song Enya, me, and the entire Mu group. Every step he took was aimed at our vital points. I have to say that this brat was able to calculate to this extent. It's an eye-opener for me. What do we do now? Mu Shumin was angry and anxious. That Song Enya is too shameless. She's trying to frame Yanqing. Is she crazy? Second brother, why don't we secretly get rid of her child? We can't let such a scheming woman marry into our family. What are you going to do? Mu Linfeng asked. Mu Shumin was at a loss for words. You're not going to tell me that you're going to kidnap that girl and forcefully abort the child in her stomach, are you? Can't I? You should know that the Song family is not to be trifled with. However, Mu Shumin disagreed and said contemptuously, do you think our Mu family is afraid of a mere Song family? At this juncture, offending the Song family will not end well for the Mu family. If these words came out of Mu Yaja's mouth, it would be more convincing. After all, I believe that he has the means to settle this matter. But you, forget it. Don't cause any more trouble at this critical juncture. Mu Shumin panicked. Second brother, that lass is so shrewd. What will happen if she marries into the Mu family? That girl won't amount to anything. With you suppressing her, won't she still be under your control? That little scheming of hers won't be enough to turn the Mu family upside down. After weighing the pros and cons, we should go with her wishes. Since she wants to marry into the family, we might as well fulfill her wish. The Mu family can still afford to give her a status. Mu Shumin bit his lip indignantly, feeling indignant. A tiger would be bullied by a dog if it fell to the ground. Chapter 2384. I'll leave this matter to you to handle. Since she's pregnant, we can't afford to take any more responsibility. Besides, marrying Song Enya into the family might not necessarily be a bad thing for the Mu family. That old man of hers has quite a bit of power in his hands. He can help a little at this juncture. Then Yanqing will definitely be wronged. What's there to suffer? Mu Linfeng smiled. He'll only suffer more if he marries Lin Shuya. That last Lin Shuya's temper was even worse. At worst, he could let him marry a few more concubines in the future. It was not impossible. The most important thing now is to settle this matter as soon as possible. Song Enya is doing this because she's sure that Mu Yanqing has no choice but to acknowledge this child. This, Mu Shumin could not calm his anger. After calming himself down, he swallowed his anger and said, "All right." When she returned home, even though she was furious, she still made arrangements according to Mu Linfeng's instructions. Mu Yanqing was not surprised when he heard the news, but he still felt uncomfortable. To him, marrying Song Enya was not a loss or grievance. It was just that he felt unbalanced. At the end of the day, he was just a replacement. Song Enya was originally aiming for Mu Yaja, but in the end, he did not care and did not want her. In the end, it fell to him. To put it bluntly, if he was not a spare tire, what was he? Only when Mu Yaja did not want her would it be his turn. He could not get over this hurdle in his heart. However, Mu Linfeng had also said that this marriage should be done as soon as possible. Once Song Enya married into the family, he would do some work to help him ascend to the position. The position of the Mu Group's CEO was still empty. Every day that it was empty was another day of turmoil in the Mu Group. A country could not be without a ruler for a day. If such a large financial group lost its leader, it would be more dangerous. If Song Enya married into the family with the support of the Song family, the Mu family could get through this public relations crisis as soon as possible. Only then did Mu Yanqing feel a little better. At night in the hospital, Yun Shishir stayed in the ward and quietly read the script. When it was early in the morning, she was so sleepy that she fell asleep. She did not know how long she had slept until she was awakened by a soft rustling sound. She opened her eyes warily and sat up abruptly, only to see Mu Yaja sitting by the hospital bed, dabbing some water on her father's lips. She was a little surprised and said softly, "You're back." Mu Yaja turned around. "You're awake?" "Yes." Yun Shishir walked up to him and said, "When did you come back? Why didn't you wake me up?" Some time ago, Mu Yaja flew straight to the United States because of the listing of Xingyu Financial Group. He did not say when he would be back. She did not know much about the listing of Xingyu Financial Group. She only knew that her man had his own assets and company outside of the Mu Group. However, she only had a rough idea and did not know how big his company was or how big it was. Mu Yaja did not mention too much and only told her to take care of Yun Yaja. "I rushed over as soon as I got off the plane. When I came in, I saw you dozing off and the script on the floor. I thought that you must be very sleepy, so I didn't wake you up. You should have woken me up. Since you're tired, sleep a little longer. I'll take care of you." Chapter 2385. Yun Shishir also sat down by the bed. He asked, "How's Dad?" The doctor said that his condition has stabilized, but he can't eat or drink for the time being. He's relying on the nutrient solution to maintain his health. Yun Shishir paused. "What about the company? Is it going well?" "Yeah, everything is going well." Mu Yaja reached out and gently tucked her hair behind her ear. "Everything is going according to plan." Yun Shishir smiled. She knew that her man was extremely outstanding and would never allow himself to fail. Once he decided to do something, he would definitely do it to the best of his ability. Hence, she was never worried. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile as he pulled her into his embrace and gently said, "I told you before that I'll give you the best life." Yun Shishir hugged his waist and said emotionally, "Yeah, I know." Sure, I've already contacted them. After I'm done with work, I'll take you to try on the wedding dress. Yun Sure was stunned. Wedding dress? Why? Don't tell me you forgot. Mu Yaja playfully scratched her nose and said, the wedding dress you wore for the wedding photo shoot. Ah, I remember now. Yun Sure smacked her forehead and said, I've been so busy recently that I almost forgot about it. Mu Yaja rubbed her head lovingly. He liked to rub her little head. It was said that the way a man doted on a woman was not to treat her like a princess, but to dote on her like a daughter. Yun Sure slapped his hand away. Hey! You're messing up my hair. I've long lost my image. Humph, Yun Sure snorted a few times. However, Mu Yaja said, you sound like a little pig when you snort. Yun Sure was a little surprised. How could he be like those ordinary couples and use Piggy as a pet name? Many couples would call each other pig babies when they flirted with each other. In her eyes, this man had always been otherworldly. She didn't expect him to have such a down-to-earth side. Yun Sure snorted in dissatisfaction. You're the piggy. I'm not going to snort like a piglet. If I'm a pig, then what are you? Humph, you're a beast, you won't even let a pig go. Before Yun Sure could finish her words, Mu Yaja suddenly hugged the back of her neck and heavily sealed her lips. The kiss caught her off guard and blocked her breath. He kissed her gently, but he seemed a little anxious. After the kiss was over, he pressed his forehead against hers and said softly, little fool, do you know that I can't wait to see you in your wedding dress in front of me? Upon hearing this, Yun Sure's heart skipped a beat. She looked up and met his tender gaze. Her heart actually skipped a beat. I can't wait to see you in your wedding dress in front of me. He had imagined this scene countless times. He imagined that when she stood in front of him in a holy and beautiful wedding dress, he would definitely feel a burning sensation in his chest that was on the verge of bursting out. Has the wedding dress been custom-made? Yes, I've ordered 3 sets. As for the other gowns, I've also picked out a few designs. When the time comes, I'll bring you to try it on. Do you know? I suddenly feel so nervous. Chapter 2386. Yun Sure told him the truth. Those brides in wedding gowns are so beautiful. I don't know what I'll look like in a wedding gown. I'm worried that I won't be beautiful enough. She was shy. She was the same. She had fantasized countless times about standing in front of him in a wedding gown. When that time came, she would be so nervous that she would not know where to put her hands. That feeling was indescribable. When are you going to try on the wedding gown? Mu Yaja replied, next week. I've already made an appointment. Okay. Dad should be more stable next week. The next day, Yun Yeching underwent his second surgery. The surgery was very successful. When his condition stabilized, Yun Sure hired a few caregivers for him and returned to the office. Qin Zhou had taken on many drafts for her. Because of Yun Yeching's matter, a lot of time had been delayed and piled up. A few investors were getting impatient from waiting. Since the contract had been signed, every day it was delayed was a loss to them. Fortunately, Qin Zhou's public relations methods were in place and smoothed out these investors' hairs. After returning to the office, Yun Sure threw herself into a hectic schedule. She shot a series of pictorials for an advertiser, then contacted and rushed to shoot 3 commercials. Following that, Qin Zhou hurriedly brought her to appear on a few variety shows. After that, she successfully joined the cast. The script she took on was an urban idol drama. She played the female lead, a genius racer, which was extremely eye-catching because it involved her family's love and hatred. Actually, there were not many stories about racers in the market. It was not that there had not been any dramas or movies about racers, but most of them were mediocre after being released. Racer stories were very unpopular. After all, there was not much of an audience for them. The more famous one in this field was a Japanese comic called Initial D. However, this script was adapted from a best-selling novel and had a sizable readership. Once the novel was published, it immediately gained countless fans. After it was printed and published, it sold more than 100,000 copies a month, which surprised many publishers. When this novel was first submitted, many publishers rejected it with the reason that such a theme was too unpopular. Unexpectedly, this novel was so popular that it made many publishers slap their thighs in anger for missing out on business opportunities. The main reason for the novel's popularity was that the female lead's character was extremely likable. Coupled with the tight plot and clever plot design, it was extremely tense and intense. This was also why Lin Ji fought so hard for it. One had to know that the most important thing for a script, besides the plot, was the character. A dazzling character could become an actor overnight. Back then, Gu Xingze relied on his outstanding persona to quickly accumulate a large number of fans. The female lead, Han Zhen, was born in a seemingly ordinary family. However, her father was an outstanding and talented racer more than 20 years ago. After winning the Grand Slam, he aroused the jealousy of other racers. During a competition, his car was secretly tampered with. An accident happened during the competition, and one of his legs was crippled. Helpless, he chose to retire, bid farewell to his career, and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 2387. Hence, he trained her from a young age and continued to develop her talent in the field of racing. However, Han Zhen did not have much interest in racing. Even though she had inherited her father's excellent racing genes and was very talented in racing, she had always regarded driving as a tedious task. Until one day, she became interested in racing by accident and found out that her father used to be an excellent racer. In the end, she found out that the father of the male lead she was in love with was the culprit who had caused her father's leg to break. The female lead's character was very likable. She was different from the noisy and silly female leads in idol dramas. She had a calm and collected personality and dared to love and hate. As a racer, she was cool and handsome. However, because the female lead in the novel had short hair, she would have to cut her hair short. Yun Shishir was worried. She had to cut her hair before getting married. Wouldn't she look ugly in a wedding dress with short hair? She hadn't even taken her wedding photos yet. When Yun Shishir first received the script, she couldn't help but feel worried and nervous. She asked Qin Zhou, "I've read the script. There are many drifting scenes. Damn it. I can't do these scenes at all. It's too exciting. Please, we can use special effects for these scenes." "What are you afraid of? It's not like you're really drifting." Only then did Yun Shishir feel at ease. However, before they could start filming, they still had to go through a series of training. Some scenes could be done by relying on the camera, while others had to be done by the actors themselves. During this period, many interesting things happened. Yun Shishir sat in the front passenger seat for the first time and observed the expressions, posture, and movements of the professional racers during the race. In the end, after one lap, she screamed the entire time. When she got out of the car, she leaned against the wall and vomited. It was too exciting. The racers they hired were all professional racers. During the training, they chose the mountain roads. There were a few times when Yun Shishir saw that the rear of the car was less than 5 centimeters away from the fence. Outside the fence was a cliff. If the car made a mistake and lost control, it would fall off the cliff. Yun Shishir was so scared that her eyes almost rolled back. Qin Zhou scolded her for being useless. "Please. Can you be a little more mature? It's not even your turn yet and you've already fainted. If it's your turn to drive, won't you be so scared that you're foaming at the mouth?" Yun Shishir was terrified. "It's too dangerous. How about I don't film it?" "No." Qin Zhou said strongly, "Do you know how many celebrities can't get this role to film? You were appointed as the female lead because The Green Apple was a hit. If you don't want to act, I'll cry for you." Yun Shishir crossed her arms and said, "Sure. If you really cry in front of me, I'll act well. Actually, I think it's more appropriate to let Jun Mo act in this movie. She's also a racer. She has short hair and is very handsome. The female lead only has short hair, she's not a tomboy." Jun Mo's image is too much like a man's. It's very awkward to act in a love scene. After a short pause, Qin Zhou said gloomily, "Are you trying to anger me to death by saying all this? I've never seen you cry before, so I'm curious." "Cut the crap. You have to work hard during these few days of training. If you act in this film, I guarantee that you'll be an A-lister." "Okay." Yun Shishir said bitterly, "I'll act well." "That's more like it." Chapter 2388. After a day of training, Yun Shishir returned home and rushed into the study. She pounced on a man who was working and said with a depressed expression, "What should I do?" "Hubby, I have to cut my hair short for the new movie. I'm done for." She wouldn't be wearing a wedding dress with short hair, would she? "I've never been willing to cut my hair." Mu Yaja was still immersed in her affectionate hubby. However, when he realized that she had to cut her hair for the movie, he immediately came back to his senses. "What movie do you have to cut your hair for?" "It's an urban idol drama. I'm playing a racer." Mu Yaja turned his head and looked at her suspiciously. "You? A racer?" "Yeah. It's hard to imagine." "Why?" Mu Yaja said, "You're so useless. Usually, when I drive at a higher speed, you get carsick. It's no wonder you're foaming at the mouth when you're playing a racer." Yun Shishir lowered her head awkwardly. Was he blaming her for getting carsick? Yun Shishir shook him and said gloomily, "Hey, the main point is that I can't keep my long hair for this role. I'm not cutting it." Yun Shishir said, "The female lead is supposed to have short hair. The director said that I'm not allowed to wear a wig. Otherwise, it would look too out of place." At the mention of this, she was quite against it. However, Qin Zhou said to her, "Shishir, you have to remember that you're an actress. You have to be more professional. We're not asking you to strip naked and run around naked. There's no difference between cutting my hair and stripping my clothes." Yun Shishir said, "I've never cut my hair short. What if it doesn't look good? How is that possible? You're pretty. If you don't look good after cutting your hair, you'll be ugly to your grandmother. Don't say such things." Yun Shishir pouted and said pitifully, "I'm going to take my wedding photos soon. If I wear a wedding dress at the wedding with short hair, it'll be awkward." However, Qin Zhou was very optimistic. "It's okay. Chairman Mu won't mind." "How is this possible? Even if you shave all your hair and become bald, you're still President Mu's darling. He'll still hold your face and kiss you at the wedding." Yun Shishir was confused by his words. She imagined herself wearing a wedding dress with short hair. It must be very strange, right? Many female artists also have short hair. They look better than long hair. At least wait until I'm done with the wedding photos. Then why aren't you filming? Qin Zhou waved his hand. "I'll approve your leave. When are you going to film? I'll give you 3 days off." She snapped out of her thoughts and heard Mu Yaja say, "It's okay to cut your hair short. Don't you think it looks less feminine?" Mu Yaja glanced at her chest and shook his head. "No." Yun Shishir followed his gaze and it landed on her chest. She blushed and covered his face with her hand to hide his gaze. She said angrily, "I'm being serious with you." "I'm being serious too." Mu Yaja suddenly put his arm around her waist and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her cheek. "It's okay. Even if you cut your hair short, I won't despise you. But I despise myself." Yun Shishir held his face and mumbled, "I must be ugly with short hair. Who asked you to take on this show?" Chapter 2389. Force yourself on me? Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Yun Shishir immediately said, "Hey. You're not allowed to think that way. Does cutting your hair make your heart ache so much?" Yun Shishir pouted and nodded. She stared at him innocently with a hint of coquettishness. "Then don't cut it." There was no need to be so conflicted. If she didn't want to cut her hair, then no one could force her. But the role requires it. The director could have slapped me to death with just that one sentence. Yun Shishir pinched her hair and twirled it around her fingers. Looking at her beautiful hair, she felt that it was such a pity. What a pity. Sigh. Mu Yaja rubbed her hair and smiled. No one dares to touch a strand of your hair. Don't think too much. Yun Shishir was a little puzzled. She asked blankly, why? There's no reason. Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows. His eyes were deep as he smirked and said, I like your black hair too. It would be a pity if you cut it off for a role. Then, am I being a little unprofessional? Yun Shishir mumbled, some time ago, an actress was criticized by the netizens for being unprofessional. What do you mean? She said, it's because there's a popular starlet. When she was filming, she wore contact lenses and the role required her to cut her hair short, but she didn't cut it. Instead, she chose to wear a wig. It was very abrupt and out of place. The netizens didn't buy it and criticized her collectively, saying that her acting was bad and that she didn't work hard at all even though she was getting such a high salary. She was even chewing gum while filming. The entertainment industry was a big dye factory. The market was getting more and more impetuous. Acting was no longer as pure as before. 10 years ago, the fans were very passionate about movie stars and youth idols. In other words, they would unconditionally protect their fans. But now, although most of the fans were obsessed with their idols, they were very rational. Besides looks, the fans also valued character and artistic integrity. Their mentality of chasing after idols had matured. They wouldn't blindly tolerate the bad sides of celebrities. The fans all said that she had such a high salary but acted in such a lousy show. Her acting skills were bad, her character was bad, and her work attitude was bad. Some of the fans especially hated her. Actually, I also think that chewing gum while filming is a bit too much, but those personal attacks are a bit too much. Mu Yaja said, high pay means high popularity. High popularity means that people will buy the drama series she produces. Sometimes, the public is like this. When they are happy, they will support her. When they are unhappy, they will step on her. Because no matter what they say, they don't have to take responsibility. Yes. After all, the internet was so big. One would not have to bear any responsibility for anything they said or criticized anyone. Chapter 2390. To be honest, I remember there was a movie queen who soaked in the cold pool for an entire afternoon when her period came. Although I feel that this is a way to create hype, if an actress doesn't even know how to take care of her own body for the sake of her work, then this kind of moral kidnapping is really scary. So, I don't think that the actress who refused to cut her hair is unprofessional. Mu Yaja frowned slightly but didn't say anything. Yun Shishir snuggled in his arms and said gloomily, because after all, most young girls like to look beautiful when it comes to long beautiful hair. Who would be willing to cut their hair? Groundless worries. Mu Yaja grumbled before adding, Qin Zhou is just talking about it, he might not really dare to cut your hair. Really? Yeah. Yun Shishir suddenly felt much better. She held his face and kissed him. She said happily, thank you for your kind words. If Qin Zhou really cuts my hair, You'll what? Yun Shishir's face darkened. I'll shave your hair while you're asleep. Mu Yaja was speechless. In the middle of the night, she stood in front of his window with a razor and smiled eerily. This scene was very scary no matter how he thought about it. Oh yeah. Yun Shishir suddenly thought of something and asked seductively, about my dad's case. Is there still no news from the police station? Not at the moment. Are they going to conclude it with a robbery case? They can't find any evidence, and the police station is helpless. No matter how much pressure they exert, with their abilities, even if it's really an enemy, they don't have the ability to conclude the case. Yun Shishir lowered her eyelashes in disappointment and frowned. Mu Yaja lifted her chin and comforted her. Don't worry about this. I've already sent people to investigate. I'll send someone to guard the case strictly at your dad's place. Okay. The next morning. Huanyu Building. Qin Zhou rushed to the company for a regular meeting as usual. However, just as he stepped into the office and pushed the door open, a tall and slender figure came into view. His eyelids twitched violently. He saw Mu Yaja sitting at his desk like an old man, casually flipping through some scripts and drafts that had been sent to him. When he heard the door open, he didn't even look up to say, "Morning." Qin Zhou didn't know when he had arrived. Qin Zhou's scalp numb, and the corners of his mouth twitching a bit. "You don't visit a temple without a reason. What instructions do you have for me?" Only then did Mu Yaja raise his head and casually set aside a stack of documents. He then leisurely asked, "Can't I come and catch up with an old friend?" Reminiscing about the past in the company doesn't seem very romantic. Qin Zhou ordered a cup of coffee and a cup of black tea. He usually had the habit of drinking coffee in the morning, but he knew Mu Yaja's preferences very well. He didn't like to drink coffee in the morning, so he ordered a cup of black tea for him. Mu Yaja ordered a few desserts. He flipped through the menu and said, "You're drinking coffee so early in the morning. You're really carefree." "It's a habit from many years." Chapter 2391. However, Mu Yaja said nonchalantly, "Everything is going according to plan. There's nothing to celebrate." However, Qin Zhou smiled. The coffee and black tea were served quickly. Mu Yaja stirred the black tea and remained silent. Qin Zhou picked up the coffee cup and took a sip as he narrowed his eyes. The two of them chatted casually for a while. Suddenly, Mu Yaja changed the topic and said, "My wife recently took on a drama. I heard that it's a racer and she's playing a female racer in it." Qin Zhou was stunned for a moment before he nodded. "Yes, the script is not bad. It's an idol drama created by a gold medal team. The original script is very popular. I don't care what role she plays. I allowed her to act because acting is her hobby. I only care about..." Mu Yaja paused and looked up at his face. He said casually, "I heard that you want to cut her hair?" Qin Zhou was speechless. He knew it. One would never visit a temple for no reason. This man was a busy man. Why would he come over to talk about old times? It must be because of his wife. As he thought of this, Qin Zhou instantly became alert and explained, "In this novel, the female lead has short hair. Therefore, in order to restore the original script, the director wants her to cut her hair." He threw the blame on the production crew. Qin Zhou completely disassociated himself from the matter. Just because they want to restore the original script, they have to cut her hair? Mu Yaja was a little displeased. "Don't you know that my wife and I are going to take our wedding photos soon? The wedding is already in the works. Don't tell me you want her to wear a wedding dress with short hair." Qin Zhou broke out in a cold sweat and turned around to play dead. "There's no point in playing dead." Mu Yaja gently knocked on the table with his knuckles and gave an order. "Don't touch a single strand of her hair. If it's really necessary, replace it with a wig. President Mu, if we use a wig, it will look too out of place. Her hair is so long that the wig won't be able to cover it." Mu Yaja did not buy it. Since it's an adaptation based on a novel, then it's an adaptation. Naturally, you can change the character's setting and change the short hair to long hair. That doesn't fit the character setting. Qin Zhou felt wronged. In the original novel, the female lead had short hair, which made her look cold. With long hair, her temperament was a little lacking. Temperament can be made up for with acting skills. Are you still worried about her acting skills? Qin Zhou's lips twitched. "I don't know how to act, but I just want my wife to appear at our wedding in her most beautiful state. Therefore, you are not allowed to touch a single strand of her hair." His attitude was very strong, and there was almost no room for negotiation. Qin Zhou felt helpless. "Chairman Mu, is there no room for negotiation?" "Yes, Mr. Mu." "No." He was used to being domineering and never leaving any way out. He didn't like his woman to suffer any grievances. Moreover, if she really did cut her hair and let the two little lads see it, they would definitely cry their hearts out. Based on this, he would never allow anyone to touch her hair. Qin Zhou felt like crying but had no tears. Mu Yaja glanced at him sinisterly and suddenly smiled coldly. If you dare to touch her hair, I'll cut off all your hair and send you to the temple to be a monk. Knock, knock, knock. Chapter 2392. An image suddenly appeared in his mind. He was wearing a long yellow robe and kneeling in the temple. His shiny bald head was full of resentment and despair as he knocked on the wooden fish with a tuck-tuck-tuck sound. When he thought of this, he shuddered violently again and cried out, "Don't! Chairman Mu, you can't be so cruel to me. Wasn't it just a haircut? Was there a need to come all the way here and put pressure on him?" Qin Zhou looked regretful. "So, you can't be so cruel to me." Mu Yaja continued, "This is an order. You can't go against it." Qin Zhou's eyelids twitched violently. Then, something flashed in his mind and he suddenly thought of something. He chuckled and said smugly, "You have no right to order me around now." Huh? Mu Yaja looked at him with a puzzled expression. "You're no longer the boss of Huanyu Entertainment. So, according to this, you're no longer my superior." Qin Zhou laughed gloatingly. "So, you have no right to order me to do this." This time, it was Mu Yaja's turn to be deflated. He couldn't help but clench his fists and glare at Qin Zhou fiercely. Qin Zhou was pleased with himself again. He smiled coquettishly and said, "As for me, as Shirshir's manager, since the production team has such a request, I have to do it. Moreover, I've already done some psychological work for Shirshir. Her hair will be cut to her ears and it will grow out again in a few months. So, Chairman Mu, you don't have to worry. Isn't it better to focus on the company's matters?" "Oh, is that so?" Mu Yaja suddenly smiled faintly and looked at Qin Zhou meaningfully. Then, he picked up the black tea and took a sip. He smiled elegantly. "Qin Zhou, you win." Qin Zhou replied politely, "You're too kind, Chairman Mu." After bidding farewell to Mu Yaja, Qin Zhou secretly made a victory gesture. How satisfying. In the past, when Mu Yaja was still the CEO of the Mu Corporation, as the boss behind Huanyu, he had always been pressured like Mount Tai. Now that he was no longer Huanyu's boss, he had suffered a setback today. How could he not be happy? Qin Zhou got into the car with a smile on his face. However, 2 days later, he could no longer smile. Ever since Xingyu went public, their financial resources had been constantly expanding. Within a week of going public, they had completed a Series B financing. On the other hand, Mu Corporation was in deep trouble. Many shareholders withdrew their investments and frantically sold their shares. Soon, Dishing Financial Group was faced with a cash shortage. Due to the shortage of funds, many projects were stuck in place. It was as if they were facing losses of tens of millions every day. They could not bear the burden. As a result, the shareholders of Dishing, which used to be incomparably glorious, had no choice but to consider selling some of the businesses that Mu Group had a controlling stake in, including Huanyu Entertainment. At the same time, in the past 2 days, the Xingyu Financial Group had been buying up Huanyu Entertainment's shares like crazy. With its strong financial resources, it had acquired 50% of Huanyu Entertainment's shares at lightning speed. It was obvious that they were going to forcibly acquire Huanyu Entertainment. Chapter 2393. He didn't care much about the entertainment industry and didn't have the time to operate it. After Mu Yaja left, Huanyu Entertainment was like an orphan abandoned on an island, isolated and helpless. 3 days later, when Qin Zhou stepped into the company again, he could not bring himself to smile anymore. After the acquisition of Huanyu Entertainment, he walked into the CEO's office and saw Mu Yaja's name tag on the originally empty desk. His face was so ashen that it looked like it was about to crack open. Mu Yaja came down from the acquisition meeting and sat in his spacious office. Looking around, he saw Qin Zhou push the door open and enter the room. "I think I have the right to order you around now." After he said that, he looked at Qin Zhou's ashen face and said nonchalantly, "Oh, right. I've already invested in the production team." As the biggest investor, I'm sure the director will be happy to accept my small suggestion. He had spent more than 10 million on the production team. The production team was already facing a shortage of funds, so they were overjoyed to see such a wealthy investor come into the production team. Hence, they immediately nodded with a smile when they heard Mu Yaja's suggestion. Don't worry, CEO Mu. Based on your question, we can consider changing the female lead's character from short hair to long hair. What do you think? His fawning appearance made him want to kneel down and lick his boots. Qin Zhou was speechless. Other than resentment, there was nothing else to say. Hateful capitalists, the root of all evil. He cursed silently in his heart. You win. On this day, Yun Shishir came back from the production team in high spirits. She was so happy that she was like a little bird. She ran into the study and chirped, "Hubby, let me tell you a piece of good news." She wrapped her arms around his shoulders excitedly and beamed. Obviously, something good had happened. Mu Yaja naturally knew why she was so happy, but he still pretended to be puzzled and asked curiously, "What good news has made you so excited?" The director told me that the female lead can have long hair instead of short. This way, we just need to do a simple trim and won't have to cut her hair. Yun Shishir was overjoyed. To be able to keep such beautiful long hair and not have any conflicts with the production team, it was simply too blissful. However, she was too naive and didn't think deeply about why the director's attitude towards her had suddenly become warm and respectful, and why the entire crew's attitude towards her had reversed 180 degrees. How could she have known that her dear husband had secretly bribed the production crew to achieve such a happy ending? Mu Yaja smiled faintly. As long as you're happy. This way, I can wear a beautiful wedding dress. Yun Shishir happily kissed his cheek. Mu Yaja couldn't help but smile. He didn't hesitate to spend a huge sum of money to acquire Huanyu and spent more than 10 million on the production team. He felt that it was worth it just to get a kiss from her. Mu Yaja placed his hand on the back of her hand and patted it gently. Apply for leave tomorrow. Yun Shishir didn't react for a moment. What for? Mu Yaja furrowed his brows. Idiot, didn't we agree that I would take you to pick a wedding dress? Ah. Yun Shishir slapped her forehead in annoyance and suddenly reacted. How could I forget about this? Chapter 2394. I'll leave you to your work then. I'll go ask Qin Zhou for leave. With that, she left the study like a happy bird humming a tune. Mu Yaja watched her leave. He couldn't help but reach out his hand to gently touch the lingering warmth on his face. He couldn't help but smile. However, he quickly regained his serious expression. He took a sip of coffee and turned his gaze back to the computer screen. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen suddenly pushed open the study door and poked their little heads in. They asked curiously, "Daddy, I heard that you and Mommy are going to pick out a wedding dress tomorrow?" Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows. Yes, what's the matter? I want to go too. I want to go too. Xiao Yichen was the first to raise his hand to sign up. Yu Yu looked at him disdainfully. Why are you making such a fuss over this? Xiao Yichen said matter-of-factly, because I want to pick out a beautiful wedding dress for Mommy. You want to pick out a wedding dress for Mommy based on your taste? Yu Yu looked at him with disdain again. You're not reliable. Xiao Yichen pressed his hand to his hurt chest again. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Yu Yu, are you doubting my taste? Your taste is terrible. Yu Yu suddenly said proudly, pick out a wedding dress for Mommy is such a sacred task. Leave it to me. So, Mommy and I will pick out a wedding dress tomorrow. You just have to stay at home and mop the floor. Xiao Yichen burst into tears. No. You're leaving me at home and having fun while I have to do the housework. It's not fair. Mu Yaja glared at them fiercely. Stop fooling around. Go back to your room and sleep. Okay. The two little rascals replied with an okay and closed the door. However, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen lay in bed. The two little rascals tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. Yu Yu, yes? What kind of wedding dress do you think Mommy will look good in? In the darkness, Yu slowly opened her eyes and raised her eyebrows. Mommy has a great figure. You'll look good in any wedding dress. There must be a most suitable style, the one that looks the most beautiful on the body. Yu had done her homework before, so she knew a lot about the styles of wedding gowns. For example, the mermaid wedding dress was made of satin, organza, and lace. It perfectly performed the unique elegance of the mermaid wedding dress. However, such a wedding dress was the most exquisite. If the figure was graceful enough, it would definitely be luxurious and beautiful. However, Yu was very confident in her mother's figure. She believed that she would be able to pull off this style of wedding dress perfectly. In addition to the fishtail, there was also a chest wrap design. It was a more classic princess-style wedding dress. The heart-shaped chest wrap could show off the beautiful lines of the shoulders and neck. Yu preferred the A-line wedding dress. It was elegant, charming, and not exaggerated. The outline of the skirt was restrained, which was more suitable for her mother's tall figure. It was the style of a socialite, beautiful and moving. The puffy skirt wedding dress is also not bad. It's the most classic style. The deep V-neck mermaid wedding dress is also beautiful. Mommy will look perfect in it. How many wedding dresses did Daddy hire the designer to design? I heard that Daddy asked the designer to design more than 10 dresses. It's enough for us to choose from. Aya, don't think too much. Go to bed early. We have to wake up early tomorrow. Yu said, then go to bed quickly. Don't be noisy. Chapter 2395. Soon, Xiao Yichen fell asleep and entered a sweet dream. Yu, however, was still unable to fall asleep. With his eyes closed, images of Yun Shishir in various wedding gowns kept appearing in his mind. This was especially so when he imagined his mommy standing in front of him in a pure and noble mermaid wedding gown with a gentle smile and charming eyes. His heart was thumping violently, and his heart was surging with emotions. Ah, sure enough, he has a soft spot for mermaid wedding gowns. Yu smacked his forehead heavily and said, "What nonsense are you thinking about? You should sleep early, or else you won't have the energy tomorrow." He closed his eyes, but his little head could not help but let his imagination run wild. He only fell asleep when it was very late. That night was especially long for Song Enya. She lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. The Muse sent word that Mu Yansheng and Mu Shumin would visit them next week. They were ready to start making arrangements for the marriage between the Muse and the Songs. When Jiang Qiming heard this news, she was so elated that she could not contain her joy. However, even though she had achieved her goal, she was not as happy as Jiang Qiming. She no longer had any expectations for marriage and only saw it as a way to return home. Yes. Wasn't every marriage a way to return home for a woman? It was just that for most unfortunate women, it was a way to return to the end of the world. Only a few could lead to happiness. However, she was not one of the lucky ones. Her marriage was bound to be unfortunate. She would probably be like her disappointing mother and father. When she was young, she had the impression that Jiang Qimeng and Song Jingguo were constantly at odds. On the surface, they seemed to be harmonious, but she had seen with her own eyes how difficult and fragile this marriage was. To be precise, her mother and father were united by marriage. Song Jingguo didn't love Jiang Qimeng, and similarly, Jiang Qimeng didn't love Song Jingguo very much. Marriage was just a way to return home. Therefore, she hated marriage from the bottom of her heart. It was precisely because she knew that a marriage without strong feelings would be a lifetime of sorrow. Therefore, when she met the person she liked, she fell in love with him without regard for her own safety. Only two people who truly loved each other could live happily ever after in a marriage, right? After marrying into the Mu family, she even imagined that she would become a woman like her mother. She would guard such a big home, guard an empty bed, and guard her weak position all the time. Yes, marrying into the Mu family meant a lifetime of glory and wealth. Many people were envious. However, it also meant a lifetime of shackles. She became the kind of unfortunate woman who despised the most when she was young. How ironic. After taking a shower, Jiang Qimeng entered the room in her pajamas. She turned on the wall lamp and asked softly, "Enya, are you asleep?" "No." "Go pick out a wedding dress with me tomorrow." "Wedding dress?" Song Enya said helplessly, "Mom, Mu Yanqing and I aren't engaged yet. Isn't it too rushed to pick out a wedding dress now?" Chapter 2396. Song Enya bit her lower lip hard and sneered all of a sudden. "Mom, do you get it or not? Look at the Mu family's attitude. They didn't even come to propose marriage in person. They just sent someone to pass a message and didn't even meet me. They're so perfunctory. It's obvious that they don't care about me. They look down on me and treat me like an object, yet you're in such a hurry to bring me to choose a wedding gown? Aren't you being a little too unreserved? If the Muse find out that we're in such a hurry to choose a wedding gown before we're even engaged, I'm afraid they'll treat me as a joke again." Jiang Qimeng was stunned. The tip of her nose suddenly turned sour. It was not that she felt aggrieved for her daughter, but she felt that her good intentions had been let down by this daughter of hers. Become a joke? Enya, do you know what a real joke is? Wearing a plain wedding gown to the wedding will make you a laughingstock. Mom brought you to choose a wedding gown in hopes of customizing a beautiful one so that you can marry into the Mu family in a grand manner. This is what Mom can do for you, and I can also support you. Song Enya stared blankly at her with reddened eyes. Now that things have come to this, can I still expect to marry into the Mu family in a grand manner? I didn't marry into the family, I was thick-skinned and clung to Mu Yanqing's trousers. At this point, a teardrop fell from her eyes. Her lips trembled anxiously as she sobbed. I was thick-skinned and clung to Mu Yanqing's trousers to crawl into the Mu family. It's not like you don't know that the Mu family's threshold is not only high, but it's also thorny. I'm covered in scars, yet I still have to convince myself that I'm valued and that I want to be in a grand manner. I'm no longer shameless enough to ask for that." Jiang Qimeng was stunned. She looked at her daughter helplessly for a moment. "What grand and dignified? It's just for the two of you." Song Enya turned her face away in a fit of pique and mocked her mercilessly. Hearing this, Jiang Qimeng's face turned cold. This time, she did not try to coax her but instead retorted, "Is this dignity and glory just for us? Enya, I thought that you would grow up after this incident. But, you keep saying that you're venting your anger and resentment at me. But, why don't you think about it for yourself? Who exactly is the one who caused things to turn out this way? How much did your father pay for you? For the sake of your innocence, you didn't hesitate to use a piece of land in exchange. You shouldn't be so willful. Dad did that for the sake of his reputation and the Song family's reputation." She felt aggrieved. Jiang Qimeng retorted, "Since you know that you've embarrassed the Song family so much, what right do you have to say this?" Song Enya was stunned. However, Jiang Qimeng had already stood up and sized her up coldly. "Tomorrow, come with me to pick out a wedding dress. If you don't want to go, then you'll have to think of a way to get married." With that, she turned around and left. Song Enya stared in a daze as the door closed and closed. With a bang, the bedroom returned to being empty and cheerless. She clenched her fists tightly, crumpled the bedsheets, and bit her lower lip indignantly. Chapter 2397. Jiang Qimeng walked down the stairs and asked, "So early?" Recently, she had been staying at home and rarely had breakfast with her. "Aren't we going to pick out a wedding dress today?" Song Enya looked up at her expressionlessly. "When are we going?" Jiang Qimeng glanced at the clock hanging on the wall and said, "It's getting late. Let's go after breakfast." "Okay." After the two had breakfast together, Song Enya set off with Jiang Qimeng in her car. Queenstown Bridal Boutique was the most famous bridal boutique in the capital. Queenstown had the world's best bridal gown brands and was the only exclusive agent in the country. The brands it represented included Pronovias, Elisab, Atelier Pronovias, La Sposa, and so on. Moreover, it had gathered the world's top bridal gown designers. It could be said that every bridal gown was handmade and was one of a kind. However, it was precisely because of this that every bridal gown was expensive. They could easily cost hundreds of thousands or even millions. Some even went as high as 10 million yuan. Queenstown's only philosophy was to crown love and give the one who loved it a custom-made wedding. It wanted every woman to be the one and only bride in his eyes. It was luxurious and romantic. Queenstown could be said to be the ultimate wedding dream of every woman. Being able to wear a bridal gown designed by Queenstown and attend a wedding was the dream of many women. Not every woman could have a bridal gown that solely belonged to her when she got married. Song Enya chose this boutique because she, too, had once dreamed of wearing a bridal gown designed by Queenstown to attend her wedding with Brother Mu and become the one and only bride in his eyes. This used to be her dream. Every time she imagined such a scene where she slowly walked up to him in a holy, trailing wedding gown and gently placed her hand in his, her heart would race. Now, this dream had become an ironic, extravagant hope. Song Enya stepped into the bridal boutique and was warmly welcomed by the staff. As a luxurious bridal boutique, the service was naturally impeccable. Soon, the staff led her into the boutique to pick out a bridal gown for her. The hall was very big, a few hundred square meters. It was enough to perfectly display hundreds of wedding dresses. Song Enya wandered along the way. Every gown displayed on the hanger was unique and difficult to replicate, but she was extremely picky about it. No matter how she looked, she did not find anything that she was particularly satisfied with. Jiang Qimeng held her hand as her gaze lingered on the gown. Her eyes were filled with amazement. Her taste was not as picky as Song Enya's, so she had taken a liking to many pieces and suggested that the latter try them on. Song Enya, however, shook her head. The ones she had picked did not catch her eye at all. Jiang Qimeng also felt a little defeated and asked helplessly, "Enya, after shopping for so long, don't you have anything you like?" Song Enya shook her head in disdain. The wedding dresses that the shop assistant showed her were all substandard. The so-called inferior products were either casually designed by designers or custom-made for customers, but the customers were not satisfied with them, so they were displayed. However, the price was slightly lower than those exclusive custom-made products. Chapter 2398. Song Enya, of course, could not pick anything that she was satisfied with. Moreover, the thought that these wedding gowns were leftovers left behind by the customers made her feel that it was very degrading. Seeing how aloof she was from the start to the end, the shop assistant at the side muttered to herself. Most of the brides who came to Empress Town had men by their side. Why did she come alone? She walked around for so long but didn't pick anything. If she disliked the taste of these wedding gowns, she could get a designer to tailor them for her. Although the prices were extravagant, anyone who stepped into Queenstown would naturally be willing to part with the money. Hence, she immediately said enthusiastically, "Miss Song, if you really don't like these wedding gowns, we can go to the next European and American-style wedding gown room." Song Enya suddenly said, "These wedding gowns are probably leftovers left behind by the customers who weren't satisfied with them." The shop assistant looked embarrassed for a moment before she politely said, "Every wedding gown in Queenstown is individually designed and custom-made. Of course, there are some customers who don't have the same concept as the designer, so the gowns created by the designer clash with the customer's aesthetic. These wedding gowns will be displayed in the museum, waiting for women who can appreciate their beauty." That's a nice way to put it. But at the end of the day, aren't they just leftovers left behind by the customers? Song Enya's words were precious, but they were extremely harsh. The shop assistant blushed and felt extremely embarrassed when she heard that. She politely said, "If Miss Song really can't find anything that you're satisfied with, then we can get a designer to tailor one for you." Song Enya glanced at her expressionlessly. Just as she was about to speak, she caught a glimpse of an extremely dazzling light from the corner of her eye. She looked over from the corner of her eye and saw a champagne-colored wedding dress being picked up high and placed in the most eye-catching position. She didn't know what material it was made of, but when she looked at it, it seemed to be glowing. The wedding gown was designed with a deep V-neck. The beautiful hemline of the gown spread out on the floor like a white lily. The most shocking thing was the design at the back. The deep V-neck design completely revealed the charming lines of the bride's shoulder blades and back. At the junction of the shoulder straps and waist, there was an extremely exquisite hand-embroidered pattern. The reason why it was dazzling was because every stitch of the embroidered pattern was inlaid with tiny diamonds. Although they were very small diamonds, each stitch was inlaid with one. Such a large embroidered pattern was probably tens of thousands of diamonds. How extravagant! Song Enya exclaimed inwardly. She could not help but walk toward the gown. Standing in front of it, she stared at it for a long time before her lips curled into a satisfied smile. This wedding dress is not bad. The shop assistant walked over and thought that there was finally a wedding dress that could satisfy this picky master. However, when she followed her line of sight, her face suddenly became embarrassed. She frowned and looked a little embarrassed, but she still praised her appropriately. Miss Song, you have good taste. This gown was personally designed by Ms. Vera Wang. Vera Wang. Wang Weiwei. Song Enya was, of course, no stranger to this name. Chapter 2399. Her designs would never go wrong on Oslin's Walk of Fame every year. The wedding gowns she designed had once caused a fashion revolution in the bridal industry. A set of Wang Weiwei's wedding gowns was like a noble diamond ring, symbolizing the sacred and precious promise of love. Of course, the price of a wedding gown was exorbitant. It was enough to buy an expensive sports car, yet people still flocked to it like a flock of ducks. Victoria and Beckham wore a wedding gown designed by her at their wedding back then. Britney also wore a top-notch wedding gown designed by Wang Weiwei at her wedding. She even said in amazement, "I've never worn such a beautiful gown before." This showed how influential that name was. Song Enya pointed at it. "I'll take it." The shop assistant immediately became nervous and explained, "Miss Song, I'm very sorry to inform you that this wedding gown is custom-made by Madame Wang Weiwei for a customer, so it's already taken." "What do you mean?" "This wedding gown is exclusively designed by the customer. It's not for sale or display." Song Enya raised a brow in dissatisfaction. "Since you said that it's custom-made, why is it displayed in such a conspicuous place?" "I'm very sorry. It's because that customer is also coming to our store to try on the wedding gown today, so we displayed it in advance to welcome her." She furrowed her brows and bit her lower lip hard. "How much is it?" The shop assistant looked at her in surprise. "How much is this wedding gown?" "I'll buy it." "I'm really sorry. Madame Wang Weiwei custom-made this wedding gown for that customer, so it's not a matter of price. Besides, this wedding gown is very small and custom-made. It may not fit you well." Song Enya sensitively retorted, "Are you mocking my figure for not being as good as hers?" "What are you talking about?" "Miss Song, you've misunderstood me. All the wedding gowns here are exclusive and custom-made for the customer. If you're not satisfied with what you saw just now, you can get the designer to custom-make one for you." She suppressed her anger and reluctantly took one last look at the gown before turning to leave in a huff. After browsing through another row of areas, she suddenly took a fancy to a mermaid wedding dress. The fishtail wedding gown was the best way to bring out a woman's unique charming curves, making her look outstanding and elegant. This wedding gown was a classic tube top design. However, the most eye-catching point was the design of the tube top. It was a Sioux embroidery design, and the hemline of the skirt was luxurious and extremely eye-catching. "How about this one?" She pointed at it and asked, "Are you going to tell me that this wedding gown is also taken?" The shop assistant took a look and smiled. "Miss Song, the gowns you see are branded. They are all custom-made." Song Enya glanced at the unique design of the branded goods and crossed her arms haughtily. "Then why don't you tell me which ones I can choose?" The shop assistant trembled as she apologized. She then smiled and said, "Miss Song, please come with me." Song Enya was infuriated. Her good mood had been ruined by the shop assistant, but Jiang Qimeng, who was standing beside her, comforted her. "Enya, don't be angry. Who knows, there might be a more suitable wedding gown for you." Humph. Chapter 2400. Song Enya snorted and caught up with the shop assistant. Afterward, the salesperson picked out a few pieces for her. Not to mention, even the lowly salesperson in Queenstown had outstanding taste. She was quite satisfied with the few pieces she picked out, so she nodded her head. The salesperson suggested that they change into the gowns. Thus, the few gowns that Song Enya had chosen were sent to the fitting room. Yun Shishir woke up especially early today. Mu Yaja came back early from the company's regular meeting and brought her to pick out a gown. The two little lads woke up early and clamored to go with them. The family of 4 drove to Queenstown. After parking the car, the two of them held the little lads in each hand and stepped into the store. As soon as the 4 of them stepped through the door, a few salespeople came up to them enthusiastically. However, when they saw Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir, they were shocked. "Oh, God! Isn't this man too handsome? He's even more handsome than those idols and celebrities on TV. If the bride could marry such a man, she'd be so blessed." However, when everyone looked to her side, they were stunned when they saw Yun Shishir. They were no strangers to Yun Shishir. Wasn't she the popular starlet who had been very popular recently? The one who acted as the female lead in The Green Apple. Could it be, she and this handsome man beside her are a couple? There's gossip. However, it was worth mentioning that Queenstown had received many distinguished clients, so they were naturally tight-lipped about their clients' identities and privacy. "Hello. What's your name, sir? Do you have an appointment?" Mu Yaja said, "My surname is Mu. I've already made an appointment." "Mr. Mu?" The salesperson was shocked. They had heard of this Mr. Mu before. A few days ago, the headquarters had sent over a dozen wedding gowns. There were a total of more than a dozen gowns, and each of them was the work of the top 10 wedding gown designers in the world. It could be said that this Mr. Mu had actually customized more than a dozen gowns in one go, and each of them was the work of a top designer. This was too extravagant. He was full of heroic spirit. So much so that they all guessed that this Mr. Mu must dote on his fiancée a lot, so he did not hesitate to spend so much money. They were all envious of this mysterious bride. However, it wasn't until he saw the bride with his own eyes that he realized it was her. "Hello, Mr. Mu. Your custom-made gowns have arrived. Do you want to try it on now? There's no rush." Mu Yaja waved his hand expressionlessly. He turned around, but a gentle expression appeared on his face. He asked Yun Shishir softly, "Do you want to pick first? Pick a few that you like." The reason why he had ordered more than 10 sets of custom-made gowns with different designs was because he was worried that she would have a choice if she was picky about her wedding gown. There were more than a dozen wedding gowns with different styles. There should be one that she liked. When Yun Shishir heard this, she suddenly laughed and said, "More than 10 sets? Why are there so many? I'm afraid you won't like it. There are more than 10 sets, so there's more space for you to choose from." The eyes of the shop assistants almost turned red from watching. Their mouths were stuffed with dog food. This Mr. Mu was the epitome of a henpecked husband. When he spoke to them, even though he was gentlemanly, he was extremely cold. However, when he spoke to his beautiful wife, he was extremely protective, as if he did not want to miss anything. Especially the way he looked at her, it was so doting that it seeped into his bones. Chapter 2401. Yun Shishir did not notice the envious gazes directed at her from the side as she asked worriedly, "Then, what if I like all of them?" "If you like all of them, you can pick out 2 for your wedding. As for the rest, you can choose from them for your wedding photos." "Okay." Thus, the group of shop assistants clustered around her and went to pick out the wedding gowns. Yu and Xiao Yichen chattered at the side. "What a beautiful wedding gown. Oh, my. Mommy is so beautiful. She can wear any wedding gown with ease." "Mommy?" The shop assistant was shocked. "Madam, may I ask if these 2 little lads are your children?" At first, they thought that they were Yun Shishir's younger brothers. After all, she was so young and did not look like she had given birth before. Besides, they could not believe that a young newcomer in showbiz already had children. This was earth-shattering news. They did not expect Yun Shishir to have given birth to a child out of wedlock. However, they did not discriminate against her at all. That was because she was so elegant that no one could despise her. Yunshusher nodded. Yes. Yu said sweetly, pretty sister, you must keep this a secret. Little brother, don't worry, we'll definitely protect our customers' privacy. Besides, Yunshusher seemed easy to get along with. She was gentle, considerate, and polite. Compared to that unreasonable woman earlier, she was practically an angel. Coupled with their professional ethics, they naturally would not leak this news. Song Enya, who was standing in the fitting room, was having her measurements taken when she heard a few familiar voices coming from outside. Her eyes widened in bewilderment. The shop assistant, who was taking her measurements, was enthusiastically saying something when she shushed her. Quiet. The shop assistant was stunned. Then, she heard Muyaja's familiar and extremely magnetic voice from outside. This dress suits you very well. Brother Mu? Jiang Qimeng heard Muyaja's voice as well. Her heart skipped a beat and her face turned pale in an instant. Is that Yaja's voice? Yes. All of a sudden, Song Enya gently pushed the shop assistant away and walked to the entrance. She gently pushed open the door of the fitting room slightly and peeked outside. She saw Muyaja holding Yunshusher's hand. Behind them were two little guys who were looking around. They were seriously choosing a wedding dress. She sucked in a cold breath of air in surprise and covered her mouth tightly. Looking at this scene, tears fell uncontrollably from the corners of her eyes. She had clearly tried so hard to suppress her longing for him, her longing for him, her longing for him, and her hatred for him. However, when she saw him, all of her hatred collapsed and collapsed. I hate him so much. But, she couldn't help but think of him, love him, and miss him. As such, the pain was tormenting her to the point of madness. She really didn't know why she was so persistent in chasing after this man. However, all of this was not sincere. Now, however, he was holding another woman's hand and appeared in front of her so blissfully and unsuspectingly. They were glued to each other like glue, and their love and sweetness stung her heart even more. Why are they here? Are they here to pick a wedding dress, too? Chapter 2402. No one would want the man they loved to appear in front of them while holding another woman's hand. Moreover, it was such a happy scene, such a dazzling scene. Song Enya covered her mouth to stop herself from sobbing weakly as she watched the shop assistant lead them to the gown she had taken a fancy to earlier. It was the deep-necked wedding gown designed by Vera Wang. The shop assistant smiled and said, Madam Yun, this is the work of Master Wang Weiwei. It's tailor-made for you. Take a look, do you like it? Yunshusher stared at it in amazement for a long time. The more she looked at it, the more she liked it. She could not help asking, can I touch the fabric? Of course. The shop assistant smiled. This gown belongs to you in the first place. If you don't like it, it won't belong to anyone else. Yunshusher said, thank you. She walked forward, reached out, and gently touched the fabric. Satisfied, she said, it feels great. Song Enya could not stop gasping. So, this wedding gown was designed by Wang Weiwei, whom he had specially found for her? She then recalled how she had taken a fancy to the gown earlier. Even if she wanted to touch the fabric, the shop assistant would not let her and politely reject her. She suddenly felt that she was extremely pathetic. This wedding gown was just like Muyaja's, unattainable. Even though they were a few meters apart, it felt as if they were separated by a galaxy. Of course. Yunshusher's gowns were all exclusive designs. As for her, she only tried on substandard items. The shop assistant led them to the rest of the gowns. Coincidentally, the mermaid wedding gown that Song Enya had taken a fancy to was also custom-made for her. Yu clapped his hands and beamed. Awesome. I think Mommy will look elegant in this mermaid wedding gown. The shop assistant was surprised. Little brother, you know that this is a mermaid wedding gown? Yes. I've done my research on what kind of wedding gown Mommy will look best in. Yun Shishir asked with interest, what did you find out? Yes. Yun Tianyu nodded and continued. The result of the research is that no matter what style of wedding dress mommy wears, she looks beautiful. Who asked mommy to be so beautiful? Everyone was amused. Even Muyaja couldn't help but smile and say, bootlicker. That's right. Daddy, you must think so too. Muyaja said, no matter what your mommy wears, I think she's beautiful. Song Enya felt heartbroken again when she heard that. Jiang Qimeng walked over to the door and frowned when she saw them. Why are they here? Yun Shishir, that be *tch, I don't know what she did to make Yaja so concerned about her. Song Enya's heart ached even more as she bit her lower lip hard. She wasn't even in the mood to try on the wedding dress. She could only watch the happy scene between them. No matter how she looked at it, she felt jealous. Their laughter was so happy, yet it made her feel so desolate. She couldn't wait to smash this beautiful scene to pieces. Song Enya gritted her teeth in anger. Unwilling to look at such a heartbreaking scene, she turned around and sat on the sofa. She was so angry that she didn't even have the strength to cry. The shop assistant was a little confused. She went up to her curiously and politely said, Miss Song, I haven't taken your measurements yet. Chapter 2403. It was such a tough job to serve such customers. Song Enya suddenly flared up. What's there to try? What you've picked are all substandard goods. Substandard. What other people don't want, you give it to me. What do you take me for? Am I that cheap? Her outburst really confused the shop assistant, who could not figure out what was going on. What do you mean by substandard? These are all exclusive designs by the designer. It's just that they don't match the aesthetic standards. Some customers are clearly suited for a deep V-neck gown, but they insist on wearing a princess-style wedding gown. They can't be blamed for that. Besides, since she said that she despises these wedding gowns, why don't she get the designer to design them exclusively for her? However, the design fees are high. They can easily cost millions. She can't afford it, can she? She covets the treatment of a queen and doesn't have the life to live. How pretentious. The shop assistant did not know that Song Enya was venting her anger on her. She was just a scapegoat. Outside the fitting room, Yun Shishir was oblivious to the heated situation in the fitting room. After the shop assistant brought them to take a look at the gowns one by one, Yun Shishir looked left and right and was very satisfied with all of them. There was not a single piece that she disliked. However, she did not know if it was because Yu liked it or something else, but she seemed to have a soft spot for the fishtail gown as well. Perhaps, the mother and son's aesthetic standards were very similar. Xiao Yichen, on the other hand, especially liked the deep V-neck gown with embroidery at the waist. Yun Shishir was shocked when she took a closer look. Standing from afar, she felt that this wedding dress was especially eye-catching. She didn't expect that it was because every stitch of the embroidery was inlaid with diamonds. According to the shop assistant, each of these diamonds had been exquisitely cut. Because of this, the reflected colors were extremely dazzling. No wonder. Yun Shishir was speechless. How extravagant. This wedding gown must be especially expensive, right? Hence, while the shop assistant went to retrieve the gowns, she leaned closer to Muyaja and whispered, Did you get the designer to customize these wedding gowns? Yes. Muyaja raised his eyebrows. Seeing that she was worried, he asked, What's wrong? You don't like it? It's not that I don't like it. Isn't it a little too extravagant? Yun Shishir did some calculations. There were more than 10 sets of wedding gowns. Just the deep V-neck wedding gown alone would cost tens of millions, right? The others were at least a few million, so wouldn't it be over 100 million? Yun Shishir's lips twitched. Muyaja said, Vera Wang specially designed the deep V-neck for you. Of course, for my mother's sake, it's considered a friendly design. The main thing is that the crafting cost is more, but the design fee is very low. Your mother? Yes. Does Wang Weiwei know your mother? You can say that I'm an old friend. Yun Shishir raised her eyebrows, but she was not surprised. Wang Weiwei knew my mother before she became famous. They had a good relationship. She also attended my mother's funeral. The white gown that my mother wore when she was buried was also designed by her. While Yun Shishir was still in shock, the shop assistant came over. Hello, Madam Yun. The gowns have been retrieved. Shall I bring them to the fitting room now? Okay. Then please follow me. Chapter 2404. Mu Yaja said, Go ahead. I'll wait for you in the living room. Okay. Take good care of Yu and Xiao Yichen, then. Yu said unhappily, Just take good care of Xiao Yichen. Yu is very obedient. Xiao Yichen snorted indignantly and narrowed his eyes. He's only obedient in front of mommy. Yu smiled but secretly stepped on Xiao Yichen's leather shoe. The little girl cried out in pain with a contorted face. She hugged Mu Yaja's waist and complained aggrievedly, Daddy. Look. Yu is bullying me again. It's useless to call for help. Yun Shishir said with a headache, If you continue to mess around, I'll asterisk. The two little munchkins immediately settled down and held each other's hands affectionately. The shop assistant brought a few sets of clothes to the fitting room, and Yun Shishir followed them in. However, when she stepped into the fitting room, she suddenly saw a familiar figure. Song Enya was standing in front of the dressing mirror. Although she was dressed to the nines, especially with her exquisite makeup, she looked extremely elegant as a socialite. However, her complexion was terrible and her complexion was very poor. This was something that could not be hidden no matter how thick the makeup was. Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment. Then, she tugged at the corners of her lips and was a little confused. She did not know why she was here. She had to admit that the huge capital was really small. How could they meet here? But why was she at the bridal shop? Could it be that she's getting married too? However, since she had bumped into her, it would be very ungentlemanly if she did not greet her. She smiled slightly and said, Enya, what a coincidence. Are you here to try on wedding dresses, too? Enya. The shop assistant at the side was shocked. She recalled that her surname was Song and she had a good temperament. Could she be the famous mayor's daughter? In the capital, Song Jingguo was quite famous. As a high-ranking family, the Song family had always been influential in the political scene. In addition, the Song family's daughter was beautiful. Hence, the name Song Enya was not unfamiliar to her. Moreover, as a leader in the wedding dress industry, they came into contact with people in the upper circle. Therefore, they were familiar with any name with a background. Song Enya glared at her expressionlessly before casting a meaningful look at the few shop assistants behind her, who were carrying the wedding gowns. Her lips curled into a half-smile. What a coincidence. Jiang Qimeng, of course, shared the same hatred for Yun Shishir. She hated the latter to the core, so the way she looked at the latter was not friendly and even revealed a hint of viciousness. Although she deliberately tried to hide it, the malevolence in her eyes was undoubtedly telling her that she did not welcome her at all. Yun Shishir did not feel awkward at all. She nonchalantly glanced at the wedding dresses beside her and smiled faintly. Are you here to try on wedding dresses, too? He. Enya, are you getting married, too? Song Enya's face turned even uglier. It would have been better if she did not mention the wedding dresses, but the moment she did, she felt even more ashamed. Looking at the wedding dresses behind Yun Shishir, which one of them was not designed by famous designers? What about hers? Although the shop assistant said that they were all custom-made by designers, there were also different grades of designers. The wedding dresses chosen by the shop assistant for her were not designed by famous designers and were mostly mediocre. How could they compare to Yun Shishir's wedding dresses? Chapter 2405. Song Enya's eyes reddened at the thought of this. She bit her lower lip hard and glared at the other indignantly. Jiang Qimeng, on the other hand, was indignant that Yun Shishir had overshadowed her. Holding her head high, she said, Yes, that's right. Our Enya is getting married. Her fiancé is the future head of the Mu family, Mu Yencheng. No matter what, our Enya will be the young mistress of the Mu family in the future. She might even be the matriarch of the family in the future. This wedding naturally has to be a grand one. Yun Shishir thought to herself, I don't care who Song Enya is getting married to, who she's going to be the matriarch of the family, and who she's going to be the young mistress of. Her only concern was that this Missy would not be ungrateful and come looking for trouble with her. Thinking of this, she smiled elegantly and said gracefully, oh, then congratulations. You've finally lived up to everyone's expectations and can marry into a rich family. The shop assistant behind Yun Shishir said enthusiastically, Madam Yun, how about you try on this wedding gown with a deep V-neck first? I think it should suit your aura very well. Okay. Yun Shishir was about to follow them into the fitting room when Song Enya suddenly took a step forward and raised her chin. Wait. Question mark. Yun Shishir stopped in her tracks and turned around to look at her with furrowed brows. What's the matter? Song Enya suddenly approached her slowly until she was right in front of her. She stared at her coldly, her red lips gently curling into a sinister arc. The atmosphere around them turned cold in an instant. The shop assistants at the side stared at them nervously. The two of them faced each other and stared at each other. However, it was as if they were having an invisible contest. Even though they had a tacit understanding and did not speak, the invisible contest of auras between them was already in progress. Song Enya suddenly said, I have something to talk to this Madam Yun about. Please leave us alone for a while. The shop assistants looked at each other, clearly confused. What is she doing? If Song Enya's expression was amiable and friendly, they would be more at ease. However, no matter how they looked at it, the woman's aggressive manner and dangerous atmosphere made them tremble in fear. What do you want to talk to me about? Yun Shishir raised her eyebrows warily. Song Enya laughed mockingly. What are you afraid of? Could it be that I'm some kind of tiger or lion that will eat you? Yun Shishir smiled and said playfully, I'm not afraid. It's just that my time is precious. I have to try on dozens of wedding dresses and choose them one by one. I don't have time to waste on you. These words were undoubtedly a great humiliation and embarrassment to her. Song Enya was furious and could not help but spit fiercely, Yun Shishir, you're so proud of yourself now. However, I have to give you a word of advice. Don't be complacent too soon. Why? Do you think that Brother Mu dotes on you so much now that he will do the same in the future? Hee hee. Compared to him spoiling you, when Brother Mu spoiled me in the past, you were nowhere to be seen. Compared to your doting, Brother Mu treats me with double the gentleness and care. What about now? The current me may be the future you. You're so proud now, but in the future, if Brother Mu abandons you one day, don't be more miserable than me. Oh. Chapter 2406. You're really good at identifying him. The problem is that you're not even worth mentioning to him. Song Enya was at a loss for words. No matter how much he doted on you in the past, he only treated you as a younger sister. How can the two of you be compared? Yun Shishir was very clear about this. Did Song Enya think that she could anger her like this? Haha. For a man like Mu Yaja, the biggest way to dote on a woman was to never give any woman the right to flaunt her power in front of him. She was his first woman, his only woman, and she would be his last. She was also his only wife in name. As her husband, he had never caused any trouble for her. Be it Mu Wanru or Song Enya, his relationship history was clean and there was almost no messy past. Based on this, what was there for her to be dissatisfied with? Actually, he used to dote on you and treated you as a younger sister. This relationship could have been maintained, and I might not have been prejudiced against it. But who asked you to be so annoying and annoying? Now that I hate you, this relationship will come to an abrupt end. He'll cut ties with you for me, but will he be willing to cut ties with me for you? Song Enya's countenance changed again and again at his insistent questioning. When Jiang Qimeng saw that Song Enya was a little unsteady on her feet and staggered, she could not help but step forward nervously and hold her arm. Yun Shishir did not back down at all. Instead, she became even more aggressive. You're not important to him at all, so I beg of you, don't think too highly of yourself. Yun Shishir. Song Enya could not help but scream as tears fell uncontrollably from her eyes. Her lips were pale as she laughed miserably. So, since Brother Mu treats you like this, how do you treat him? He's the head of the Mu family. He's glorious and arrogant, but for you, he actually gave up his position as the head of the family and gave up his empire. How willful you are. How could such a proud man give up his position as the head of the family for you? If it weren't for you, he would still be the head of the Mu family with a bright future. It's you who ruined him with your own hands. Is this how you love someone? Don't you think that's too cruel? Haven't you thought about how big of a predicament he'll be in once he falls from his position? Yun Shishir was stunned and pursed her lips. In fact, when she saw that he was willing to step down from his position as the family head for her, she was deeply moved. For such a proud man, he was willing to give up his empire for her. Just based on this, she was determined to accompany him for the rest of his life without any regrets, sharing honor and disgrace. At the same time, she was mentally prepared. Even if he left the Mu family and was no longer as glorious as before, even if he was in deep trouble after leaving the Mu family, no matter if he was rich or poor, she would face it with him. She had once thought that since he had been ostracized by the Mu family and had lost his job, such a proud man would definitely not be able to recover from such a setback. Even though Yu was an outstanding actor and she was able to maintain a decent life with the income she earned from acting. However, such a man would definitely not be able to accept financial aid from his wife and children. However, it was this proud man who surprised him time and time again. Chapter 2407. He told himself all the time that he wanted to give his wife and child the happiest life possible. He had married her because he loved her. He wanted to dote on her and take better care of her. He didn't want her to follow him to suffer and endure a poor and destitute life. A poor couple had to live in sorrow. As a man, he wanted to give his wife the best life possible. He did the same and did it. He had long planned to leave the Mu family, but because of her, this plan had to be brought forward. Fortunately, everything was under his control. Even though there were several critical situations, it was still within his control. Yun Shishir smiled and said casually, "So what? So what?" Song Enya laughed in anger. Yun Shishir, you're really shameless. If you love a man, you naturally want him to become more outstanding. But not only did you not contribute, you even dragged him down time and time again. If it were me, even if I let go, I wouldn't have caused Brother Mu to be in such a sorry state. What if Xingyu Financial Group didn't survive this time? What if he really couldn't recover from this setback? How can your conscience be at ease? If you're with me, everything will be different. The Songs have the ability to support Brother Mu as the head of the family again. They'll do everything they can to help him take back what belongs to him. Unlike you, you'll only humiliate his pride and excellence. You selfish woman, you don't love brother at all. Is this how you love someone? Despicable. Shameless. Yun Shishir tilted her head and looked at her. She watched as Song Enya tried to humiliate and mock her crazily, as if she could achieve her goal by stabbing her all over. She suddenly sneered. I've disappointed you. My man is not that cowardly. Song Enya was stunned. Not only did she not fly into a rage out of humiliation, she even looked at her with a pitiful expression, as if she was a pitiful worm. Back then, when the Muse asked him to choose between the Muse and me, he chose me. Perhaps, this is the price he has to pay for loving me. But he didn't care, abandoned the Muse, and chose me. What does this mean? Yun Shishir suddenly took a step closer to her and gracefully whispered into her ear, "This means that my status is higher than yours. For the sake of loving me, he abandoned everything, but what about you?" For his sake, she had resorted to unscrupulous means. She had even resorted to artificial insemination in an attempt to bind him by getting pregnant with his child. You pitted him and shamelessly threw yourself at him at all costs, but he still didn't even look at you. Song Enya, I think you're quite pitiful. The man you love so deeply doesn't even want to look at you. Don't you think you're pitiful? Song Enya involuntarily tightened her grip on the drill when she heard that. She took a few steps back and looked at her with red eyes, breathing heavily. If Yun Shishir hadn't mentioned it, she might not have realized it. Only then did Song Enya realize that her seemingly insulting words were not the truth at all. It was an invisible humiliation to him. Every word she said now seemed to be tearing open those scabs. Pus and blood flowed out, and the flesh was badly mangled. Enough. Song Enya broke down and bit her lower lip so hard that it almost tore. Stop talking. Chapter 2408. Song Enya, there should be a limit to how much you can humiliate yourself. Jiang Qimeng, who was standing at the side, could not take it anymore. Gritting her teeth, she took a step forward, raised her hand high, and was about to slap her. When the shop assistants saw this scene, they exclaimed in shock. Yun Shishir did not take a step back in fear. Instead, she quickly reached out and grabbed her wrist. She was so strong that Jiang Qimeng could not break free from her grip. She raised her other hand, but Yun Shishir grabbed it as well. Yun Shishir, you, let go of me. Auntie Jiang, like mother, like daughter. You're from a prestigious family, after all. Don't ruin your family's demeanor. As a daughter, you have no sense of shame, and as a mother, you have no manners. When Song Enya heard this, her eyes turned red. She glared fiercely at Yun Shishir as if she wanted to kill her. Shut up. Jiang Qimeng roared, you're not allowed to say that about Enya. Yun Shishir. I'll kill you. Song Enya lost control of herself and rushed forward. However, in her anger, she didn't have any sense of propriety at all. She slapped her across the face again and again. Jiang Qimeng also rushed forward. The mother-daughter pair grabbed Yun Shishir's clothes with one hand and her hair with the other and slapped her wildly. The shop assistants at the side immediately surrounded them in a flurry. Just as the situation was getting out of control, the door of the fitting room was suddenly pushed open. Yu Yu was the first to rush in nervously. He was looking at the wedding dresses earlier when he vaguely heard a conflict in the fitting room. He rushed in immediately and saw the mother-daughter pair tearing Yun Shishir apart. Anxious to protect his eyes, he immediately pounced on Song Enya, grabbed her arm, and bit down hard on it. Ah! Song Enya screamed and subconsciously kicked him with her leg. Get lost. Scram. Yun Shishir was initially calm and composed, but when she saw Yu Yu rushing in and Song Enya kicking and punching him, her eyes turned red. She rushed forward, grabbed Song Enya's hair, and slapped her repeatedly. Yu Yu, on the other hand, refused to let go of Song Enya's arm and bit down harder. Mu Yaja and Xiao Yichen rushed over when they heard the commotion. They pushed the door open and saw the scene in front of them. Xiao Yichen immediately cried out in alarm. Just as he was about to rush forward, he was stopped by Mu Yaja. He strode forward and separated the two. Clenching his fist, he punched Song Enya hard in the face. With this punch, everyone immediately calmed down. Song Enya let out a muffled groan and fell to the ground after being punched in the face. Soon, the taste of blood spread between her lips and teeth. She wiped the corner of her lips with her finger and was surprised to see a trace of blood. Her teeth loosened and fell from her gums. With a spit, she spat out a mouthful of blood. 2 broken teeth lay quietly in the blood foam. Her pupils dilated and lost focus. Jiang Qimeng shrieked when she saw this. Mu Yaja glared at her fiercely and grabbed her by the collar. His slender fingers pinched her neck as his handsome eyes darkened with murderous intent. Are you going to mess around, too? Jiang Qimeng was so frightened by his intimidating growl that her face froze and she broke out in cold sweat. Yaja. Chapter 2409. She could tell that the man in front of her was truly enraged. It was to the extent that he lost control of his emotions and threw a punch at Song Enya. He had never hit a woman before. The heaviest slap he had ever given Song Enya was a slap. This time, however, he used his fist. It was clear that he was not going to give her any face. Muyaja said coldly, "I've said it before, I don't want to see you touch a single strand of her hair again." Could it be that the mother and daughter pair have ignored my words? Brother Mu. Song Enya burst into tears. Why are you doing this to me? Why? Muyaja laughed coldly. Song Enya, must you be so despicable and make me look down on you? Song Enya held her aching cheek as her lips trembled uncontrollably. Tears rolled down her cheeks pathetically. She could not take it lying down. She could not take it lying down. She had clearly decided to let go, but seeing a woman like Yun Shusher receive so much love from him, she was full of resentment and had nowhere to vent. She had lost everything, so could she not throw a tantrum? If Yun Shusher were to hear this, she would definitely sneer. What a high-sounding reason. Why should she endure her Missy's temper, then? Get lost. Muyaja mercilessly ordered them to leave. He did not care why these two were here, but he did not want to see them ruin his woman's mood. He was still looking forward to Yun Shusher wearing her wedding gown. Right now, he only wanted these two to get as far away as possible. Jiang Qimeng wanted to say something, but when she saw Muyaja's vicious gaze, she stomped her feet in anger and turned to help Song Enya up. Like defeated soldiers, the two fled pathetically. Yun Shusher immediately ran to Yu Yu, picked him up, and checked him from head to toe. Are you hurt? Yu Yu pushed her shyly. No. I saw her kicking you. Please, how can she hurt me with that little strength of hers? Yu Yu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Yu Yu is not that weak. He's healthy and uninjured. Muyaja walked to Yun Shusher's side, held her shoulders, and looked her up and down nervously. What about you? Are you hurt anywhere? Yun Shusher touched her hair and muttered, It's just that my hair is a little messy, but there's nothing else. They were just blindly attacking and didn't hurt anything. Muyaja heaved a sigh of relief and asked in confusion, Why are they here? She must have arrived earlier than us. She's probably here to pick out a wedding dress. Choosing a wedding dress? Yes. I heard from Jiang Qimeng that Song Enya is getting married to Mu Yancheng. She's hoping that she'll marry into the Mu family and become the matriarch. Upon hearing this, Muyaja laughed. With Mu Shumin suppressing her, she still wants to become the matriarch. She's a little naive. A few shop assistants immediately went forward to apologize. Yun Shusher waved her hand. It's nothing. I was just bitten by a mad dog. How can I blame you? The shop assistant burst into laughter and said, After all, such an unpleasant thing happened in the shop and affected your distinguished experience. We're really sorry. It's okay. I'll have to trouble you to try on the wedding dress next. Seeing that Yun Shusher's mood was not affected, Muyaja held the hands of the two little lads and said to her, It's good that you're fine. You can try on the wedding dress first. Call me if there's anything. Chapter 24:10. The shop assistant and Yun Shusher went into the fitting room to change into the wedding gown. The rest of the people quickly brought a mop to clean up the mess on the floor. The first gown to change into was a deep V-neck wedding gown. This wedding gown was especially troublesome because the hemline was very wide and long. It required 2 people to carry it, and there were many small diamonds on the back, so it was a little heavy. After a while, Yun Shusher walked out of the fitting room in the wedding gown. She couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. The moment she walked out, the 2 stylists standing outside the fitting room widened their eyes in shock. Yun Shusher had only changed into a wedding gown. She didn't even have makeup on her face. It was just a thin layer of makeup, but she still looked extremely radiant. Oh my God. As expected of, the work of a top master. This wedding gown is really beautiful. Another shop assistant said, It also depends on who is wearing it. Madame Yun looks especially beautiful in this wedding gown. She looks very elegant and classy. She can totally control this aura. The group of people encouraged, Hurry up and let Mr. Mu see the effect. Yun Shishir was escorted out by a group of people. Mu Yaja was sitting on the sofa and reading a wedding magazine. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen were bored out of their minds waiting. However, when they saw Yun Shishir walking out in a wedding gown, they stood up in shock. Wow! Xiao Yichen let out an exaggerated cry of surprise. He was obviously shocked. Even though Yu Yu didn't make a big fuss like him, Yun Shishir, who was slowly walking over, couldn't take her eyes off her. Her eyes were wide open and her mouth was wide open. She couldn't close it for a while. He quickly tugged at Mu Yaja's sleeve. Daddy! Look! Mommy has already changed into the wedding gown. Mu Yaja raised his head and looked in the direction Yu Yu was pointing at. He saw a woman in a deep V-neck wedding gown with its white and holy hemline trailing on the floor. She exuded a luxurious aura as she walked over. She was as beautiful as a proud queen, yet she did not lose her elegance. Yun Shishir stood rooted to the ground and held his hand generously. She looked at him a little nervously. Is it nice? Her beautiful skirt spread out on the ground like a pure white lily. She turned around slightly. Her back was also a deep V, perfectly showing off her charming shoulder blades and distinct back lines. At the junction of the shoulder straps and waist, there was an extremely delicate hand-embroidered pattern. The light shone on everyone. It was truly dazzling. There was a large embroidery pattern on the waist. Every stitch was inlaid with small diamonds, so it was very eye-catching. It was luxurious, but also elegant. At that moment, Mu Yaja couldn't help but hold his breath for a moment. It was said that when the groom saw the bride standing in front of him in a wedding gown, he would be moved to tears. He didn't cry, but his chest was filled with warmth. He was like a youthful and ignorant youth who saw his beloved girl and was filled with passion. It was too beautiful. In this world, it was almost impossible to find any words to describe this beauty. Yun Shishir's skin was especially snow-white. It was like high-quality porcelain, but it was also as if it was frozen and could be broken by the slightest breeze. Such beautiful skin, coupled with the snow-white and pure wedding gown, was perfect like a work of art. He held his breath for a long time. When he finally regained his breath, he controlled his emotions that were about to overflow. He smiled and said, "Very beautiful." Chapter 24:11. Upon hearing this, Yun Shishir couldn't help but blush. She pursed her lips and was a little confused by his one-word evaluation. Only beautiful? Mu Yaja walked over slowly and stood in front of her. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. He had never been good with words, and it was rare for him to compliment something. However, he knew very well that this wedding gown's aesthetic value could only be realized when worn by the right person. After she put it on, he couldn't imagine how this wedding gown would look on anyone else. It was tailor-made for her, but it was a perfect fit for her aura. Other than the word beautiful, he really couldn't find any other cliché to describe it. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen circled Yun Shishir twice and exclaimed in surprise. Yu Yu exclaimed, "This wedding gown doesn't look as good as the mermaid style, but I didn't expect it to look so beautiful on Mommy. I can't wait to see Mommy try on the mermaid style wedding gown. Who knows, it might even be beautiful." Xiao Yichen said in surprise, "Mommy, I didn't know you could be so beautiful." Yun Shishir broke out in a cold sweat, and a row of black lines appeared on her forehead. She couldn't help but pinch his ear. "Explain. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by, Mommy can be so beautiful? Are you saying that Mommy isn't beautiful if she doesn't wear a wedding gown?" Xiao Yichen giggled and snatched it away. He muttered, "Mommy doesn't care about her appearance at home. She wears pajamas and doesn't care about her appearance at all. If this goes on, Mommy will become an auntie in my heart." Yun Shishir's face darkened completely. Yu Yu couldn't help but hit him. "Mommy won't become an auntie. Mommy will never grow old." Xiao Yichen hugged his head and cried, "I was just kidding." Yun Shishir was speechless again. If she never aged, wouldn't she become an old monster? Although there were indeed many goddesses in the entertainment industry who did not age, they were all covered up with makeup through crazy sugar daddies and superb plastic surgery techniques. Their real faces had long aged. It was just that these female celebrities refused to accept that they were getting old. Therefore, they were unwilling to face their aging. What about her? Even if he was old, he would age gracefully. Yu suddenly pleaded excitedly, "Mommy, can you try the fishtail wedding gown? I really like that wedding dress. You'll definitely look good in it." Yun Shishir looked into the distance. Yu said seriously, "I've been studying wedding gowns for a long time, and I've always felt that the fishtail style suits Mommy the most." He even drew a portrait of Mommy in a fishtail wedding gown. Yu's drawing skills were quite good, so he drew a portrait of Yun Shishir in a fishtail wedding gown based on his imagination. In the end, he was mesmerized after drawing it. He thought that Mommy would definitely look good in a fishtail wedding gown. The shop assistant immediately brought the fishtail wedding gown over eagerly and suggested, "Madam Yun, why don't we try the fishtail wedding gown for the second set?" Yun Shishir glanced at the starry-eyed Yu and nodded. "Okay." After speaking, she couldn't help but poke Yu's head. "You. All right, Mommy will fulfill your wish." "Okay." Yu said excitedly, "Mommy, do you need help?" Yun Shishir pointed at the sign on the door and reminded him, "See that? Men are not allowed in." Chapter 24:12. Once they entered the fitting room, a few of the shop assistants excitedly asked her, "These two Xiao Bao twins are so funny. I've never seen such a cute child. Not only is he cute, but he's also very serious when he speaks, just like an adult. They're so cute. I'm so envious of having a pair of twins. If I could give birth to two babies at once, I'd be so happy to have such a pair of adorable little angels. Besides, not only are they adorable, but they're also very polite. They're like two gentle and refined little gentlemen. They're obedient and well-behaved." "How old is your baby?" Yun Shishir replied, "He's 7. 7? Only 7? They look very tall to me." The shop assistants looked at each other and widened their eyes in shock. Suddenly, they laughed and hurriedly said, "My baby is also 7 years old. However, compared to your baby." She paused and her tone changed. She sounded a little disappointed and dispirited. "Sigh. That's a far cry." Yun Shishir laughed. "What are you talking about? How can you say that about your baby?" The shop assistant said gloomily, "It's the truth. They're both 7 years old, but my boy can't even speak clearly. It's already not easy for him to recite an ancient poem or count from 100 to 200. Last time, that little guy finally learned how to count from 1 to 100. His dad and I were so happy that we held a banquet to celebrate. My mom said that I couldn't even count to 10 when I was 7. Yun Shishir broke out in a cold sweat. Yu could count from 1 to 100 when he just started speaking. Compared to children his age, his IQ was indeed outstanding. This showed that he was very logical. At 1.5 years old, he could already count from 1 to 100 in an orderly manner. At that time, Yun Yecheng was extremely surprised. Once, he even joked that Yu was much smarter than her when she was young. Yun Shishir felt ashamed but proud at the same time. At the mention of children, the shop assistants instantly opened their mouths and started criticizing their babies. "Our child, Sai. He only knows about donuts and milk tea every day." Previously, his aunt brought home a cup of milk tea by chance. He secretly tasted it and opened the door to a new world. He used to be fine drinking plain water, but now, he's crying and throwing a tantrum if he doesn't touch desserts for a day. Children are usually taken care of by their parents-in-law. They dote on him and buy donuts every day for him to eat. How can a child eat these things every day? I only's mother and father's mother and mother's mother's mother. I'm forbidding him from eating desserts. Children can't be taught from generation to generation. Momo, you'd better spend more time on the child. Otherwise, if it goes on like this, the child will be spoiled. At that time, if you educate him, you will have no prestige at all. He won't listen to you and will become very willful. Chapter 24:13. I was the one who insisted on raising my little ancestor. He was especially close to me. When he was 6 years old, he knew how to fold his own blanket. I thought my child was smart and sensible, but now that I compare him, sigh. Yun Shishir frowned helplessly. How could children be compared to each other? What parents had to do was to give their children the greatest confidence. They had to let their children know that if they did something well, they were the best. In their mother's and father's eyes, they were also the best. They should not blindly compare him with other children. Otherwise, the child's confidence would be defeated by other children. Over time, he would lose the motivation to work hard because he would subconsciously think that no matter what he did, no matter how well he did, he would not be recognized and could not be compared to other children. Someone suddenly asked, Ms. Yun, who usually takes care of your child? Yun Shishir smiled and said, before I started my career, although I was busy with work and was a company employee, I still took care of my own child. My Yu has been very independent since he was young. When he was 3 years old, he could wear his own clothes. When he was 4 years old, he stood on a small stool and cooked by himself. I don't know why, but Yu seemed to be especially smart since he was young. He was sensible and obedient and knew how to be filial to his elders, except that he was usually a little too quiet. What surprised me the most was that the food he cooked was not worse than a chef's. Even though she had already reserved some of her words, the moment she finished speaking, the huge fitting room instantly fell silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. That was too unbelievable. Cooking by himself? His culinary skills were not bad. It sounded unbelievable. Cooking by himself? When he was 4 years old? Oh my God, that's not a child prodigy. The group of people was in a mess and shook their heads. I don't believe it. My child is already 9 years old, but I still have to chase after him to feed him. He's so naughty. Yun Shishir said, you can't spoil him. If he doesn't want to eat, then you can eat your own food. When he's hungry, don't feel sorry for him. Get him something to eat in a hurry and tell him that if he doesn't eat at mealtime, he won't have anything to eat. Over time, he learned that if he didn't eat, if he didn't listen, he would starve. Otherwise, the child will develop the habit of thinking that you're begging him to eat. Even if he doesn't eat, he'll still have something to eat when he's hungry, so he'll become more and more willful. So that's how it is. Sigh. To be honest, I really envy you. To be able to have 2 such obedient babies, there were often some things that couldn't be envied. Did you sign him up for a lot of interest classes since he was young? Yun Shishir shook her head. Not really. On the contrary, I was usually very busy with work and rarely had a vacation. I worked overtime until very late, and he was alone at home. Apart from lunch and dinner when I took the time to come back to eat with him, usually, I really didn't have much time to do things with him that he liked. But he seemed to have been very patient since he was young, and he has a typical Virgo character. When he does something, he must do it to the best of his ability, to perfection. He could always do the things that the average child didn't have the patience to do. She vaguely remembered that when she was young, a type of architectural puzzle was very popular. Chapter 24:14. Usually, children wouldn't have the patience to piece them together. They would be interested and want to buy them back. She had also bought one when she saw her colleagues buying it for their children. In the end, within 2 days, when she came home from work, she saw a tall metal tower model on the table in the living room. She had bought the model that was especially difficult to piece together. There were more than 2,000 puzzle pieces, but Yu had finished it in 2 days with his own ability. She could imagine that he had probably locked himself in his room for 2 whole days, carefully cutting and piecing the pieces together. Half a month later, her colleague complained to her that she had bought a few hundred yuan for the puzzle, but in the end, the child had lost his patience halfway through the puzzle. In the end, she and the child's father had to finish the puzzle. She wanted to cry but had no tears. She was full of complaints. When Yun Shishir heard this, she said proudly, "Are you finished it in 2 days?" The colleague immediately retorted, "That's impossible. You must have help, right? She said innocently, I'm working overtime every day. How could I have time? I don't believe it. Yun Shishir took out her phone to show her colleague the photos she had taken of the final product. Only then was the colleague skeptical. She sized her up as if she were looking at a freak and asked a classic question, Shishir, how did you give birth to this child? She had given birth to such an amazing child. Yun Shishir didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the question. The more patient the child is, the more intelligent he is. Yeah, our child has no patience at all. No matter what toy he plays with, it will take him 3 days. You didn't. The toys that she had given him were all kept in the bookcase and he would lovingly wipe them every once in a while. Even though he had moved many times, he rarely lost the toys. Before moving, he would always put the toys in a cardboard box and take them away. He was a very nostalgic person. After a long time, he might have lost interest in playing with them. However, during his lonely childhood, these toys had accompanied him. Hence, he couldn't bear to throw them away. Yun Shishir suddenly smiled. What could be more blissful than having your child cherish your feelings? There was a great sense of belonging. Every time she saw Yu taking good care of the toys she gave him, she would feel very happy. Whether it was a couple or a child, there was always a feeling of pleasing between them. Children also hope to gain the approval of their parents. It was the same for parents. Several shop assistants were envious while exchanging their experiences on taking care of children. They helped Yun Shishir put on the fishtail wedding dress. When Yun Shishir came out of the fitting room again, everyone looked at her and couldn't help but be surprised. Miss Yun, your baby really has a good sense of beauty. You look even more elegant and charming in this fishtail wedding gown. You flatter me. You're flattering me, not at all. Yun Shishir pushed the door open and walked out. When Yu heard the door open, he rushed over excitedly. His eyes were first filled with shock and amazement, then he circled around her and sized her up a few times before nodding his head in satisfaction. Mommy, you look even better in this dress than the previous one. Mu Yaja and Xiao Yichen also raised their heads and looked over. The father and son's eyes flashed in unison, revealing a dazzling light. Chapter 24:15. Wow! Xiao Yichen exclaimed exaggeratedly. Then, he clutched his chest and said in all seriousness, Mommy, how can you be so beautiful? Daddy and I are mesmerized by you. Mu Yaja couldn't help but smack him on the head. Be more reserved. Xiao Yichen said, Daddy, you can be reserved if you want to, but I don't want to be reserved. Because I'm really beautiful. Yu snorted coldly. Humph, you only know how to bootlick. What? It's the truth. I really think that Mommy is really beautiful. Other than beauty, what else can you say that's constructive? Yu's words were shocking. The few shop assistants at the side were in a mess again. Constructive, the child actually knew the word constructive. Xiao Yichen rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment. Then, he snapped his fingers and said, Mommy looks like a goddess in this dress. Yu snorted. Mommy is a goddess to begin with. Like a mermaid. Humph, vulgar. Amused by their banter, Yun Shishir could not help retorting, You guys can keep feeding me with your bewitching potion. Xiao Yichen ran up to her and said pitifully, Mommy, how can you call this bewitching? Do you want Xiao Yichen to cut out his heart for you to see before you know that Xiao Yichen is sincerely praising you? Yun Shishir was speechless. Yu frowned in disdain. Eek! That's disgusting. Yun Shishir looked at Mu Yaja expectantly and asked, What about this one? What do you think? Mu Yaja stared at her for a long time. He couldn't hide the amazement in his eyes. Then, he said, If you wear this on the wedding day, it'll definitely be beautiful. What do you mean by beautiful? Daddy, do you know how to praise people? Xiao Yichen paused for a moment and then said in an intoxicated manner, Mommy will definitely amaze everyone when she wears this to the wedding. Everyone will be mesmerized. You've finally learned a few idioms, Yu retorted expressionlessly from the side. PFFF, Yun Shishir smiled. Xiao Yichen's face was covered in dirt. He stomped his feet angrily and said, You, if you continue to be like this, I won't play with you anymore. Ha! Now you know how to threaten people? Yu said as he clapped his hands leisurely. Aya, I can't wait. You'd better not play with me. It's best if you don't stick to me. Xiao Yichen hugged Yun Shishir's long legs, looking for warmth. Then I'll stick to mommy. Yu immediately walked over and tried to pry his hand away. Go away. Don't dirty mommy's dress. Don't stick to mommy. What are you doing? I want to stick to mommy. I'll beat you up. Come on. I'm not scared of you. Your arms and legs are so small. A punch from you won't hurt or itch. As he spoke, Xiao Yichen even showed off his muscles and rolled up his sleeves to show off his martial prowess. Everyone was shocked when they saw the well-defined muscles on his arms. Oh my God! Such a small child actually has triceps muscles. They were shocked. Everyone was silently criticizing. I really want to have a dozen cute babies like this. What was the experience like trying on more than 10 wedding dresses? Quick. Want. Take. Off. However, after trying on each dress, she was very satisfied and couldn't bear to part with any of them. Chapter 24:16. In the end, after an intense discussion, which almost got into a fight, the father-son trio decided that the deep V wedding gown and the mermaid wedding gown would be worn on the day of the wedding. As for the remaining 10 gowns, they could be used for their wedding photo shoot as a memento. Yu strongly requested for the mermaid wedding gown to be used for their photo shoot. Initially, Muyaja wanted to wear it on the day of the wedding. However, Yu strongly requested to keep such a beautiful photo of her mother in the photo album. When the time came, they could make a pendant like their uncle and embed the photo in it. Muyaja said that there would also be a professional wedding photographer on the day of the wedding to capture the entire process. Only then did Yu agree to compromise. After trying on the wedding gowns, Yun Shishir felt as if her whole body was about to fall apart. Really, very tiring. Moreover, it was already very late by the time they tried on all the wedding gowns. The 4 of them casually had dinner. During this time, they received a call from the hospital. Gong Jia called to inform them that Yun Yecheng had regained consciousness. Muyaja and Yun Shishir looked at each other before rushing to the hospital. When they arrived at the hospital, the 4 of them had just entered the elevator when they bumped into the operating table that was being pushed in hurriedly. Yun Shishir took a look and was shocked to see his face, which had been burned beyond recognition. Her heart skipped a beat. Lu Jingtian. A few nurses also walked in. There were just enough people and they pressed the button for the floor where Yun Yecheng's ward was. There was silence in the air. One of the nurses suddenly sighed. It's too scary for such a good girl to be burned to such a state. The chief surgeon said that she might not have any hope of speaking in the future. But at least she made it through the critical period safely. She's lucky to be able to survive. With such a large area of her body burned, we don't know if she'll be at risk of infection later. Many of her tissues have been damaged. After she recovers, she'll have to face a long rehabilitation period. She's really pitiful. I heard that last night, the patient's mother suffered a myocardial infarction due to her mental and physical exhaustion. She was sent to the emergency room and is still in the ward now. His daughter has suffered such a calamity. He must be devastated. Perhaps, he might not be unable to speak. This was not certain. It also depended on the recovery during the infection period. The operation was a success, but his face was burned to such a state. It was too scary. Being alive is also a lifelong nightmare. Exactly. If it were me, I'd rather die like this. If I wake up and see my face burning like this, I might even go crazy. On the side, a woman who looked like the head nurse glared fiercely at the blabbermouth nurse and reprimanded, "Know your place and be careful with your words. Don't say things that shouldn't be said." The nurse hummed in shame, but she thought to herself, that's the truth. Wasn't that the truth? If a woman couldn't wear a beautiful dress, couldn't put on beautiful makeup, and looked in the mirror every day, she would see a face that looked like a ghost. It was as if her face had been destroyed by lava. What was the point of living? A crippled body would destroy a person's survival instincts. He didn't know if this patient would still have the courage to live after waking up. If it were her, she would definitely seek death. Chapter 24:17. Didn't the news say that there was a suspicious person in the footage taken at the scene of the fire? They suspected him to be the arsonist. No matter what, even if he wanted to commit suicide, he wouldn't use such a cruel method. What's more, what could cause such a huge fire to spread all over his body? Didn't you read the news? There was ethanol on his clothes, and it caught fire when it came into contact with an open flame. Then, it must be a large amount of ethanol to cause such a fire. TSK, TSK, TSK. What a pitiful person. Yun Shishir stared silently at Lu Jingtian's face. If not for the latter's iconic silhouette and the fact that the hospital could not find a second patient with such a terrifying burn, she would not have recognized her. A few nurses suddenly sized them up. Realizing that there were other people present, they did not say anything else. However, such terrifying injuries caused them to feel a lingering fear. One never knows which comes first, an accident or tomorrow, said one of the nurses. The elevator door suddenly opened with a ding sound. A few nurses pushed the bed out and hurriedly pushed it to the intensive care unit. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen looked at each other and narrowed their eyes suspiciously. Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja also looked at each other. He held her hand tightly and comforted her. Don't let your imagination run wild. Okay. She nodded. It was not because she was frightened by Lu Jingtian's unsightly face. Instead, she heard the nurse's words earlier. One never knows which comes first, an accident or tomorrow. She was just thinking about it. When they rushed to the ward and pushed open the door, they startled the person on the bed. Yun Yecheng's eyes widened in shock, and his breathing quickened. When Gong Jie saw this, he immediately comforted him. Uncle, Shishir, and brother-in-law are here. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen are here, too. Don't be afraid. He comforted him again and again, and Yun Yecheng's emotions gradually calmed down. Ever since that incident, he felt extremely uneasy when he was half-conscious. When he was awake, be it a doctor or a nurse, anyone who pushed open the door and entered would make him subconsciously fearful. He could not close his eyes, and the cornea of his left eye was also burned, so he could not see clearly. Gong Jie comforted him and raised his head, indicating for them to be gentle. Yun Shishir quietly walked to the bed and saw Gong Jie turn around. He picked up a cup of water, dipped a cotton swab, and smeared it on the inside of his lips. She asked worriedly, "Can't Daddy drink water now?" "Yes." Gong Jie nodded. "The doctor has repeatedly reminded me not to drink plain water. After a person was burned, the sodium salt would also be lost when the body fluid leaked out. If the person was given plain water, it might cause the concentration of sodium chloride in the blood to drop further, causing the cells to be filled with water. This would lead to cerebral edema and pulmonary edema, which would lead to the so-called water poisoning. If it was not handled well, it would be life-threatening. The main way to rehydrate was to replenish blood volume through the veins to relieve thirst. Mu Yaja said, "Xiao Jie, it's been hard on you." At the side, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen said in unison, gratified, "Xiao Jie, it's been hard on you." The corners of Gong Jie's eyes twitched. "What did you call me?" Chapter 24:18. Yun Yecheng could vaguely hear Yun Shishir's voice. His facial muscles twitched as he tried to open his mouth, but he could only make a few gasping sounds. Even so, it was so painful that he felt as if his throat was smoking. He frowned and tried to raise his hand, but the nerves in his hand had been burned through. It had become numb, and he could no longer make any basic movements. Yun Yecheng was in agony. Was he going to suffer like this for the rest of his life? Before this, he was woken up by the pain. Gong Jia called for the doctor, who hurried in to give him an injection of analgesia. Even so, it did not help. Although he felt better, the pain was still unimaginable to an ordinary person. Yun Shishir noticed his subtle movements and immediately went to the bedside. She did not dare to hold his hand and only said softly, "Dad, I'm here. You can't speak now and need to rest. Don't force yourself." Yun Yeching stared at her with great effort, but his eyes gradually moistened. The moment she saw his moist eyes, her heart instantly wrenched in pain as her heart ached for him. She quickly wiped away the traces of tears in front of her and comforted him. "Don't worry. No matter what, I'll take good care of you. You don't have to be afraid. Everything is over now." "Everything is over now?" Yun Yeching's breathing suddenly quickened. How could everything be over now? He would always wake up to Yun Na's sinister and hysterical laughter in the middle of the night. Whenever he recalled her hate-filled eyes in his dreams, he would feel even more fearful. She didn't die. Did she come back to seek revenge? What kind of deep hatred did she have for him to be so ruthless? He was already injured. Would it be Shishir's turn next? Or, could it be Yu or Xiao Yichen? Yun Yeching regretted all of a sudden. He regretted the fact that, when Yun Shishir had asked him about it, he had indirectly induced her to engage in ordinary social violence. Back then, he was still concerned about Yun Na. He was worried that she would be caught, brought to justice, and sentenced to death. However, when he woke up, he felt a lingering fear more than once. He shouldn't have hidden it for her. A mistake was a mistake, and they should be punished by the law. Even if she was his own daughter, he shouldn't have protected and indulged her. However, from that day onwards, Yun Shishir never asked him about it again. His vocal cords were burned and he could no longer speak. Hence, this matter became a source of worry for him. He could not tolerate Yun Na continuing to make mistakes. If he hurt Shishir, he would never be able to forgive himself. Therefore, this had aroused his desire to live. Yun Yeching was suddenly overcome with grief and could not stop his tears. She wiped them away patiently as her heart ached even more. "What should we do? Daddy must be in a lot of pain. Didn't the doctor give him any sedatives? I was injected with an analgesic pump, but the doctor also said that the effect is only to relieve the pain. It only reduces the pain slightly." This, Yun Shishir frowned worriedly. How can an ordinary person endure this kind of pain? Is there no other way? He just passed the infection stage. The analgesic pump can only be administered once a day. Yun Shishir looked at her father, whose breathing was getting more rapid, and fell into a state of worry once more. Chapter 24:19. Gong Jia suddenly thought of something. He held Yun Shishir's hand and walked to the balcony. "There's another way." Gong Jia said, "Bring uncle back to the Gong family." Yun Shishir was startled. "Back to the Gong family?" Gong Jia said confidently, "The Gong family has the best medical science in the world. There's no second place in the world. If we bring uncle back to the Gong family, I can guarantee that uncle will receive the best treatment. Moreover, there's a chance that he can regain his ability to speak." Yun Shishir was a little worried. "Really?" "Of course." Gong Jia pondered for a moment and said, "Previously, a person was injured by a grenade and was sent to the local hospital. The doctor said that he couldn't save his legs. If we bring him back to the Gong family's medical base, he can try to get out of bed and walk in less than a month. Half a year later, he has recovered. This is a miracle for the medical standards of the world. If we return to the Gong family, can father really recover better?" Gong Jia shook his head and said, "I can't be sure to what extent he can recover, but compared to the medical standards here, it will be more than twice as good. At the same time, if we return to the Gong family, we can guarantee his safety." Yun Shishir was tempted. If it's feasible, it's best to return to the Gong family for treatment. Gong Jia said, "Then I'll make the arrangements. Tomorrow, I'll send someone to send uncle back to the Gong family." "So fast?" "With uncle's body, the faster the treatment, the more optimistic it will be for him to recover. If there's any delay, I don't have much confidence. Yun Shishir hesitated for a long time, then slowly nodded. Gong Jie took out the satellite phone and said, "Then I'll make the arrangements." "Wait." Yun Shishir suddenly held his hand tightly. Gong Jie raised his eyebrows in confusion. However, she asked hesitantly, "What kind of family is the Gong family?" "Shao Jie, can you tell me?" Gong Jie's expression froze. He furrowed his brows, then relaxed and asked gently, "Sister, do you want to know?" Yun Shishir said, "Yes. Of course. This is related to you, so of course I want to know." Gong Jie suddenly smiled, patted her head, and comforted her, "As long as you want to hear it, I will tell you. But, I have to make arrangements for Uncle first, and then I will tell you when I have the chance." "All right." Gong Jie smiled and suddenly kissed her forehead. He pressed his forehead against hers and asked softly, "Do you know about the Hurricane Group?" "Hurricane Group?" "Yes." Gong Jie said, "The Hurricane Group is backed by the Gong family." Hurricane Group. Yun Shishir and Gong Jie returned to the ward, still deep in thought. Gong Jie walked to Muyaja and told him about their earlier discussion. Muyaja asked suspiciously, "Is the Gong family's medical standard really that good?" "Of course." Gong Jie raised his eyebrows arrogantly. "The Gong's medical technology is not something the Mu group can compare to." Muyaja's face turned cold. When Yu heard that Gong Jie wanted to bring Yun Yecheng back for treatment, he slapped his forehead in shock and mumbled, "Why didn't I think of that? With the Gong's support, Grandpa should be able to get good treatment." Yun Shishir looked at him in surprise. "You know about the Gongs?" Yun Tianyu bit his lower lip. "Oh, no," he seemed to have let it slip. Chapter 24:20. The corners of Yu Yu's lips twitched as he broke out in a cold sweat. He then turned his face away and pretended to be dead. Gong Jie could not help but burst into laughter. "This little lad is so adorable." He could not help but reach out to pinch his little cheeks. You seem very suspicious." Yu slapped his hand away and stuck out his tongue at him. Yun Shishir interrogated, "Tell me honestly, what are you two hiding from me?" Yu's expression turned awkward for a moment before he coaxed, "Mommy, I'll tell you when we get home." He was determined to stall for time with her. Yun Shishir agreed on the surface, but deep down, she was certain that she would not let this guy get away with it again. After settling Yun Yecheng down, Gong Jie said to Yun Shishir, "I'll make arrangements tonight to bring Uncle back to the Gong family for treatment tomorrow." "Okay." Yun Shishir nodded and walked to the bedside. She whispered to her father, "Dad, don't worry. You'll definitely get better." Yun Yecheng stared at her. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down as if he wanted to say something. Yun Shishir immediately stopped him. "Your throat is burned. Don't try to speak, okay? Rest well and get better soon. I'm still waiting for you to attend my wedding." Yun Yecheng's gaze softened, and only then did his expression soften. He gently closed his eyes, taking in her words. On the way home, Yun Shishir suddenly looked forward to Muyaja and asked curiously, "Do you have any plans for the wedding?" "I'm planning to hold it in October." "I don't know if Dad will be better by then." Yun Shishir pondered for a moment before she suddenly took a deep breath and shook her head. "It's still not possible. Let's postpone the wedding for the time being, okay?" Yu and Xiao Yichen looked at each other in surprise. "Why? Dad hasn't recovered yet. Seeing him in so much pain today, I'm full of guilt. I'm afraid I can't convince myself to happily wear a wedding dress for the wedding. It makes me feel so guilty." She furrowed her brows, looking worried. When she was trying on the wedding dress today, she was immersed in happiness. She was pleasantly surprised and looked forward to the wedding. However, the moment she stepped into the hospital and saw Yun Yecheng in pain, her happiness dissipated in an instant. Probably no one could ignore the pain of their loved ones and force a smile to welcome happiness. Yun Shishir said tentatively, "When Dad gets better, we'll hold the wedding. We can take the wedding photos first." When everything is ready, we can hold it happily when the whole family is reunited. This way, we won't have any regrets. She originally thought that she would see disappointment on his face, but Muyaja did not feel disappointed. Instead, he smiled guiltily. I'm sorry, I didn't think it through. He had not thought of this at first. When it came to kinship, he was really weak. Other than his mother and Xiao Yichen, he rarely felt the warmth of kinship when he was young. However, when she came, he suddenly realized that Yun Yecheng's serious injury was probably a sore point for her. If he could not recover, he would not be able to welcome the wedding with a happy heart. He was a perfectionist. Naturally, he did not want to have any regrets during their wedding. Muyaja said, "It won't be too late to hold the wedding when Dad gets better." Chapter 24-21. Yun Shishir smiled in relief. After returning home, Yu went to the bathroom. After washing up, he wanted to sneak into the bedroom. Yun Shishir was quick to catch him. She carried him into the living room and placed him on the sofa. Yu was trembling in fear. Yun Shishir looked at him and narrowed her eyes. She suddenly smiled and said in an extremely gentle voice, Yu, why are you so self-conscious today? Don't you want Daddy to read you bedtime stories? Yu scratched his head and said, Mommy, you don't know. When Daddy reads bedtime stories, his face is stern and his voice is eerie. It would be strange if I didn't have nightmares. Muyaja, who was sitting at the side, glared at him. Nightmares? Yu imitated his expression and said, Once upon a time, there was a beautiful castle in the Elan kingdom. In the castle lived the king, the queen, and the adorable princess. His eerie tone was extremely frightening. Yu imitated Muyaja's tone and said, It would be strange if I didn't have nightmares. Yun Shishir flicked his forehead. Don't change the subject. Okay. Yu pouted softly. Let me ask you. Do you know about the Gong family? Yu looked at him and said, He thought to himself, what did Uncle say to Mommy? Did he tell her about the Gong family's background? Or did he tell her about the things he had done? Oh my God. He was now a good citizen. Other than occasionally causing trouble at the Pentagon and being in charge of the basic development of the Hurricane Group's Heavenly Eye project, he didn't do anything bad. He probed, Did Uncle say something to you? Yun Shishir narrowed her eyes and looked at him suspiciously. She nodded. He said a lot. For example? Yu asked anxiously, what did he say? At this moment, the mother and son were having a mental battle. Yun Shishir glared at him. Don't play any tricks with me. I'll be strict if you confess, and lenient if you resist. Yu said with lingering fear, if I confess, I'll be punished severely. If I resist, I'd better not confess. PFFF, Muyaja almost choked on his tea. Xiao Yichen laughed so hard that tears almost came out of his eyes. In a moment of desperation, he had actually reversed his words. Yun Shishir blushed and said, Mommy, it was a slip of the tongue. If you don't tell me the truth, I'll spank you. All right. I'll talk. I'll confess. Yu raised his hands in surrender. He took a sip of the warm milk and asked, Mommy, do you know anything about the Hurricane Group? I don't know much about it. Yu observed her expression and said carefully, the truth is, the Gong family's background is not simple. They have a powerful background. The Hurricane Group is prominent internationally, especially in the political arena. It's essentially an international arms organization controlled by the Gong family. Arms, Yun Shishir nearly bit her tongue as a look of surprise surfaced on her face. Military munitions? Was that, terrorists? Chapter 24-22. It can be said that the Hurricane Group occupies a large portion of the global arms market. It is the leader of the arms market. On average, 7 out of 10 people in the world use weapons made by the Hurricane Group. As for Uncle, he holds an important position in the Hurricane Group. He can be said to be a core member of the group and is highly valued by the family. He is mainly in charge of the North American market and is the main person in charge of the North American arms market. He is also the chief commander of the Hurricane Group and is in charge of large orders for important organizations in various countries. Yun Shishir was flabbergasted. Isn't that illegal? It is illegal in the country, but not completely. Mommy, you seem to have misunderstood. Yu continued, unlike the arms sold on the black market, the Hurricane Group mainly deals with international markets. Among them, Africa is the most important market for the Hurricane Group. Most of the weapons made by the military factory are sold to the war-torn areas in Africa. In addition, they also deal with other countries. Those international arms dealers were nothing in his eyes. The Hurricane Group's biggest competitor is the United Five Countries. The world's top arms dealers, apart from Z, M, E, F, and Y, are controlled by the Hurricane Group. Yun Shishir was completely dumbfounded and shocked. The United Five Countries had their own military factories. At the same time, they would also sell large quantities of weapons to other countries around the world. The Hurricane Group's main competitors were these 5 countries. Naturally, they were also listed as enemies by these countries. Therefore, the Hurricane Group's enemies were the American FBI. Speaking of which, Gong Jia was one of the top figures on the FBI's wanted list. When the interests of their country were infringed, some big shots would naturally not sit back and do nothing. Therefore, the North American shipping route was blocked by the M government. His job was to smoothly clear the route and avoid these cumbersome international agents to transport to the war zone. Are you kidding me? Yun Shishir was in disbelief. In her impression, military fire had always been an unconventional field. Unconventional? That was illegal. Mommy, every word I said is true. Yu suddenly said, do you still remember when Uncle appeared on the day of your engagement? Yes. That freighter of his was no ordinary freighter. Instead, it was a freighter filled with military supplies. In other words, the things on that freighter completely destroyed that island. Yun Shishir jumped in shock and was tongue-tied. Yu coughed awkwardly and probed, Mommy, did I scare you? Yun Shishir stared at him for a while and nodded. A little. Then do you want me to continue? Yes. Yun Shishir hurriedly asked, is it dangerous to do this? This question stumped Yu. Danger? How could it not be dangerous? As long as one was in this area, danger lurked everywhere at all times. There was once when Gong Jia was transporting a batch of goods to North America via shipping route. However, he was blocked by the FBI's International Anti-Terrorism Team, and the two parties got into a fierce fight. Fortunately, Gong Jia escaped unscathed. If he had lost and been arrested, he would have been sent to the Nuremberg military court for an international trial. Chapter 24-23. Another time, there was a rebellion in an African country. Gong Jia was escorting a batch of goods to the destination when they were surrounded by the rebels. In the fierce battle, both sides suffered heavy losses. Among them, Gong Jia's most valued deputy was kidnapped by the rebels and beheaded in the end. Gong Jia was furious. Although he eventually destroyed the rebels' lair, he paid a hefty price for it. What was even more regrettable was that the deputy was outstanding. Losing one of Gong Jia's favorite men became his heartache. Was it dangerous? Of course, it was dangerous. Every step was treacherous. Mommy knew that Gong Jia often stayed at the hospital to take care of Yun Yecheng. What she did not know was that, in order to ensure Gong Jia's safety, Hurricane had dispatched more than a dozen mercenaries to guard every corner of the hospital. However, if one wanted to become powerful, one had to pay a price. Gong Jia had once confessed that when he first took on this job, he thought that it was an outrageous thing to do. Bringing war and rebellion to those countries, as well as the helpless faces of the refugees who had been harmed by the war, had given him nightmares. It was only later when he witnessed the tragic death of a refugee child in the midst of gunfire that he suddenly woke up. Life was so fragile. The life of the weak was in the hands of the strong. He did not want to be the weak. He wanted to be the strong one who could control his own destiny. That was until Yu proposed to perfect the Deva I project. Gong Jie did not agree at first, but Yu's philosophy was that, although the sea was big, it was not endless. Until now, what mankind had not conquered was the sky. The sky was the main way to start a war. Whether it was nuclear bombs or missiles, if one could control the sky and forcibly monopolize the air routes, one could control the war situation to a certain extent. Not only that, it would also bring about considerable benefits for Hurricane Group. The Deva I project was still in its implementation stage. Hurricane Group's current technical resources were far from enough. They were constantly recruiting talents from various fields to form a core research and development team before proceeding to the next stage of research and development. From this, it could be seen that Hurricane Group's ambition did not stop here. They wanted to become the dictator of war. However, Yu would never tell her this. Perhaps even if he explained, Yun Shishir might not be able to understand the reason behind it. Shao Jian never mentioned it to me. Yun Shishir frowned and suddenly looked at Mu Yaja. Do you know about the Hurricane Group? Yes. Mu Yaja did not avoid the topic. The Gong family's power is unimaginable to ordinary people. It can be said that even the current Mu family is just an ordinary family in front of him. When Yun Shishir heard this, her expression became even more exaggerated. No wonder little Jia is always so busy. Yu nodded. Of course. When uncle is busy, he doesn't even know where he is when he wakes up. Yun Shishir was speechless. He never told me. Maybe he didn't want mommy to worry? Also, he was worried that mommy would be afraid. She was afraid that he was a cruel person. After all, he came from this field and was listed as a dangerous person internationally. Uncle was worried that mommy would be afraid that he was a scary person if she knew his identity. However, another reason is that the fewer people who know about uncle's identity, the better. Chapter 24:24. No matter what he does, I won't be afraid of him. He's my family. After a pause, she suddenly felt a little worried. I'm just worried about him. Yu's eyelids twitched. Seeing Yun Shishir's worried expression, he hurriedly comforted her. Mommy, don't worry. Uncle has a lot of mercenaries protecting him. Those mercenaries are all top experts in the mercenary world. Hurricane is in charge of the world's top mercenary organization, Mercenary Paradise. Mercenary Paradise is the leader among mercenary organizations. Even the FBI can't do anything about it. Is he that good? Yu said, yeah. He can deal with two dads at once. Mu Yaja's eyes twitched when he said that. He couldn't help but glare at him. Yu said innocently, it's the truth. Mu Yaja was speechless. Xiao Yichen patted Mu Yaja's shoulder sympathetically and said pitifully, Daddy, you don't seem to be very authoritative. Yun Shishir suddenly thought of something. Her gaze fell on Yu. How do you know so much? Yu scratched his head and explained dryly, because Uncle mentioned it to me before. He told you, but not me? You'll be confused if you're too concerned. Uncle didn't tell you because he was afraid that you'd worry too much. Yun Shishir's gaze was a little lonely. If he didn't tell me, wouldn't I be more worried? Mommy, don't you feel afraid or repulsed? Huh? Yu said, it's such a dangerous job. Mommy, aren't you afraid that Uncle is a bad person? Yun Shishir said honestly, there's no boundary between good and bad people. In other words, America is a righteous country in the world and acts as the world's police. However, to some countries that have been deprived of their resources, they're like demons. There's no such thing as absolute justice. People only look at their own interests. Wow! Yu exclaimed in an exaggerated manner, Mommy, I can't believe you have such awareness. Yun Shishir's face darkened. Yu, what do you mean by that? Nothing. Yu smiled gracefully. As long as Mommy doesn't let her imagination run wild. Yu returned to her room and closed the door. She heaved a long sigh of relief. Tuck tuck tuck. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Startled, He thought that it was Yun Shishir and immediately asked, "Mommy?" "It's me." Xiao Yichen's pitiful voice came from outside the door. "You locked me out of the room, okay?" Yu hurriedly opened the door to let Xiao Yichen in and closed the door behind him. Xiao Yichen turned on the lights in the bedroom. Seeing Yu's stiff expression, he immediately said, "Don't worry, Mommy didn't ask anything." "That's good." Xiao Yichen patted his chest exaggeratedly and said, "Huff huff. You scared me just now. I thought that your real background was going to be exposed." Yu's lips twitched and he said, "If Mommy knew that I was the core of the hurricane group, she would definitely jump in fright." Xiao Yichen said, "It's still optimistic that she would jump in fright. She might even get a heart attack." Yu's mind was in a mess. He felt that Mommy was like a little white rabbit. His uncle, daddy, him, and even grandpa, who was far away, surrounded her. Which one of them wasn't at the level of a big bad wolf? It seemed like Mommy was completely surrounded by a pack of big bad wolves. Chapter 24-25. Xiao Yichen stretched out on the bed and looked at the ceiling. "Actually, I don't think Mommy needs to know so much. She just needs to know that whether it's Uncle, Daddy, Yu, or Xiao Yichen, they're all very reliable people." Yu lay on the bed as well. The two little lads stretched out in unison and looked at the ceiling silently. "Mommy is so stupid, so we should protect her more carefully." Upon hearing this, Xiao Yichen turned to look at Yu and smiled knowingly. He suddenly said, "If possible, build a castle and protect Mommy in it. No one is allowed to bully her. There's no need to build a castle." Yu paused for a moment before saying heroically, "We're Mommy's castle." "Humph. You can build a castle. I want to be Mommy's guardian knight. No matter where Mommy goes, I'll protect her." Yu muttered unhappily in his heart, "What a spoilsport." Yun Shishir did not sleep well the entire night as her thoughts ran wild. She was thinking about Gong Jia and how much Yun Yecheng would recover after returning to the Gong family. Could he still speak? Many of his vital nerves had been damaged. She could only pray that he wouldn't suffer too much. The next day. By the time Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja rushed to the hospital, Gong Jia had already sent a car to the hospital. When they saw him, he was already wearing a military trench coat. It was still the same snow-white trench coat and white military boots. At a glance, he looked tall and slender, and his skin was even fairer. However, what was slightly different was that there was a hint of black at the base of his hair. Gong Jia walked over with a smile and hugged her tightly when he saw her. "Sis, my vacation is over." After his vacation, he arranged for Yun Yecheng to stay at the Gong family's medical center before flying to North America to start a series of work. Yun Shishir hugged him reluctantly. She was really happy to have him by her side this new year. Now that they were separated, she did not know when they would meet again. Yun Yecheng was carried into the car. The private jet arrived at Mersline Private Airport. Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja boarded the car together to send Yun Yecheng and Gong Jia to the airport. By the time they reached the airport, the medical team had been waiting for a long time. Before Yun Yecheng was sent to the plane, Yun Shishir, holding back her tears as she knelt beside the bed and encouraged him, "Dad, I'll wait for you to come back." Yun Yecheng looked at her with the same reluctance to part. He was heartbroken that he could not open his mouth to say goodbye to her. He was worried. Even if she could move her hands, she would still be able to write down his instructions on a piece of paper for him to see. The problem was that she was now a cripple. She couldn't do anything but look at him with tears in her eyes. "Don't worry, Xiao Jia will definitely have a way to cure you," Yun Shishir said as she looked deeply into his eyes. "I'll wait for you to come back." Tears rolled down Yun Yecheng's cheeks. Yun Shishir retreated to her original spot and was quickly pushed into the car by the medical staff. Gong Jia boarded the plane, but he suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at her. The wind at the airport was very strong, and it messed up his sideburns. He suddenly walked up to Yun Shishir and pulled her into his arms. He hugged her tightly with a frown, reluctant to part with her. "Sis, take care." Chapter 24-26. Gong Jia smiled and rubbed her head affectionately. When he looked up at Muyaja, his face turned cold as he warned him expressionlessly, "If you dare to bully her when I'm not around, I'll teach you a lesson." Muyaja snorted and ignored him. The two of them were still in an abyss of suffering even when they parted. Gong Jia then said to Yun Shishir, "If brother-in-law bullies you, tell me. I'll come back immediately." He gave her a business card with his satellite phone number on it. Yun Shishir kept the card and smiled. "Your brother-in-law won't bully me. You, on the other hand, must take care of yourself." You said that his job was dangerous." She had no other concerns except for him to protect himself. Gong Jia promised, "I will." With that, he let go of her and turned to board the plane without looking back. The cabin door slowly closed. Yun Shishir and Muyaja returned to the hospital. Yun Yeqing had been transferred to the Gong family's medical base. As they were in a hurry, they did not have time to tidy up the ward and pay for the remaining expenses. However, when she returned to the ward to pack her clothes, she discovered that Yun Yeho and Xiang Yu had arrived at the hospital at some point and were waiting for her in the ward. They were originally here to visit her, but the nurse told them that Yun Yeqing had been transferred away. They were at a loss. Hence, when Yun Shishir returned to the hospital, Yun Yeho anxiously went up to her and asked, "Where's your father?" "Uncle, why are you here?" "I'm here to see if he's feeling better." Yun Shishir replied, "He's still the same, but he's been transferred to another medical base for treatment." Yun Yeho was at a loss. "This burn hospital is the best in the capital for treating burns. Where did you transfer your father to?" "I just sent him on a plane. I'm planning to send him to a medical base overseas to see if there's a miracle." Yun Shishir only told him this much and did not say much else. Yun Yeho did not pursue the matter further and only expressed his concern before ordering his wife to tidy up the ward. Actually, there wasn't much to pack. Other than a few things, the rest was the script that she had read during the night watch. After packing up their things, Yun Shishir and Muyaja were about to leave. When they passed by a ward, the door suddenly opened. A middle-aged woman suddenly rushed out of the ward, heartbroken. As she walked out of the ward, she covered her face. Tears flowed non-stop as she let out a sorrowful cry. Startled, Yun Shishir dodged and looked through the window of the ward, only to see that it was Lu Jingtian's ward. Ah, how could I forget? Lu Jingtian also lived on this floor. This floor was full of intensive care units. They were all patients with severe burns and needed to be observed. Another middle-aged man walked out of the ward. He looked a little upset. His face was red, and his eyes were red and swollen. There were thick bags under his eyes. It was obvious that he had not rested well. Don't cry so easily in front of the child. If the child saw this, he would feel even more despair. Do you still expect Tian to get better? Get better? The middle-aged woman cried and retorted, how else can she get better? She's injured to this extent. Who the hell is it? Who the hell is so cruel? It was obvious that this woman was well educated, but when she mentioned the culprit, she was so agitated that she even used vulgar words like ***. Chapter 24-27. Who knows? The man grumbled in annoyance. At the mention of the murderer, he gritted his teeth as well. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with murderous intent. If we find this kind of anti-society criminal, we should drag him out and shoot him. He'll definitely be a scourge if we keep him alive. The woman cried. Tian woke up last night. She couldn't speak, but her eyes were empty as if there was no life in them. She should know that her looks are all ruined. She loves to dress up and look beautiful. If she sees herself in this state in the future, she won't be able to live on. What should we do then? The man was also worried for a moment. He subconsciously took out his cigarette box and wanted to light a cigarette, but when he remembered that they were in the hospital, he stuffed the cigarette back into the box. The woman continued to cry bitterly. The doctor said that it's a miracle for her to be able to speak. My heart almost died when I heard that. It's a miracle for her to be able to speak. How painful will she be for the rest of her life then? The man replied gloomily, the police came 3 times yesterday to ask the doctor if she could speak. After all, the police suspect that this is a murder case, but there's no one else at the scene except her. They didn't collect any useful evidence at the scene, not even a fingerprint. The CCTV couldn't get a clear picture either. If she can't speak, this case can only be put on hold for the time being. The woman gritted her teeth in hatred when she heard that. Who exactly is it? Yun Shishir walked over and looked into the ward through the window. She saw a person lying quietly on the bed. If not for the slight rise and fall of her chest, she would not even be able to tell that it was a human figure. This was the first time she saw the tragic state of Lu Jingtian after she was injured. Her entire body was charred black, and there was no unscathed skin. Her facial features were indistinguishable as she was smeared with white ointment. She could only vaguely see a pair of empty eyes staring fixedly at the ceiling. Her eyelids were also burned and could not be closed, just like Yun Yecheng's. However, in comparison, the surface area of his injuries was slightly better than hers. Lu Jingtian's life was probably ruined after suffering such a calamity. Yun Shishir looked at her. She did not sympathize with her, but she felt uncomfortable. With such injuries, if she did not have the support of her family, she would not have the will to live. Mu Yaja walked over and attracted attention. Mr. Lu Jingtian's father looked up and was stunned when he saw him. Chairman Mu, he was a senior executive of Huanyu, so he was naturally no stranger to him. Mu Yaja looked at his father. Papa Lu immediately replied in trepidation, the situation isn't very optimistic. The doctor said that the burn area is very large. Even though we managed to save her life, she's still under observation. We'll have to observe her in the future. When Mama Lu saw him, she cautiously whispered into his ear, this is calm. Mrs. Lu was shocked. She immediately squeezed out a smile. Chairman Mu. Mu Yaja paused for a moment before asking, is there any progress in the case? At the mention of this, the 2 men's faces darkened as they shook their heads. No. Chapter 24-28. Lu Bushing sighed in disappointment. I don't know if the murderer will be brought to justice in the end. His methods are too cruel. A girl as beautiful as a flower and as exquisite as jade had been ruined to such an extent. I wish I could kill the murderer with my own hands. But the case hasn't made any progress. The doctor said that he doesn't know if there's any hope for her to talk. We can only pray that Tian can talk. At least, she can provide the police with some useful clues. Didn't they collect any valid evidence at the scene? Yun Shishir suddenly asked anxiously. Lu Bushing shook his head, also at a loss. Mama Lu sighed and said, if we had even the slightest clue, we wouldn't be so worried. It's been a long time since the incident happened. All the pressure that should be exerted has been exerted, and the police chief has been contacted. What's next? The chief is also very surprised. Yun Shishir frowned thoughtfully. Logically speaking, with such advanced investigative methods, it's impossible that they can't find any clues by now. The police said that they've checked all the surveillance cameras in that area, and they didn't find any suspicious people at that stage. How can that be? There were surveillance cameras everywhere on the streets, like countless eyes in the sky. How could they not find any suspicious footage? Just as Yun Shishir said suspiciously, Lu Bushing continued, the police suspect that the moment she left the bar, she got into the car directly, and then they couldn't capture her. However, the police investigated the bar entrance for 2 days and didn't find any witnesses. They said that they saw her